welcome to night 2 of the 2023 AFL draft. It's so great to have your company once again. Well, last night we saw 29 players realise their dreams of being drafted to an AFL club. There was plenty of drama with live trading throwing in a few curveballs, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more twists and turns tonight here on AFL Draft Night Live, as well as lots of excitement as more draft hopefuls begin a new chapter in their lives. Back again to help me analyse each and every pick tonight, the draft guru himself, Cal Toomey, fresh off a successful Phantom draft on night 1, and gettable co-host and club expert Riley Beveridge. Welcome to you both.
It's great to be back, Matt. Tonight's an exciting night. Last night was terrific, wasn't it, with 29 players, as you say, finding new homes. I expect around the same amount of players tonight to get selected as well, finishing with a total of around 60 selections across the two nights. So some nervous times as well. There's a lot of boys who are hoping to get into that 30 or so selections, and we'll see who gets those opportunities throughout the night.
It was certainly an exciting night 1 of the AFL draft. Plenty of live trades happening. We saw 2 clubs trade into the top 10. Keen to see how a few of the clubs that didn't pick last night, Richmond, Fremantle, Port Adelaide, how they navigate night 2 when their time to shine finally comes. They've been waiting a long time for it.
You've obviously been on the phones, both of you, today. What has the club's reaction been after last night?
I think it all went reasonably to script and to plan. I mean, that's the beauty, I guess, of night 1 versus night 2 as well. I think we'll see more unpredictability throughout tonight, and that probably says a bit too about the draft pool. I think we'll see the elements that everyone's been talking about throughout this year, the evenness and the way that there's not too much spreading pick 20 and pick 45. I think we'll see some interesting names come up today that might be a few surprises. So that probably wasn't the case last night. The surprises last night were the trades, weren't they? As you mentioned, the Crows making their massive move for Dan Curtin, the Bombers trading up to get their hands on Nate Caddy and some of the other selections in and around that, but relatively straightforward last night in terms of the names. A few order changes and all the rest, but look, I thought it sort of played out as we expected. It's phenomenal to think that there was 29 players picked in the first round because of those bids coming through as well. And there'll be more bids tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the names that went on night 1 of the draft, as Cal mentioned, there weren't too many surprises. I think you ultimately end up having 27 of the 29 in your Phantom draft were correct that were called on the night. So I think clubs thought that the names that were picked last night were relatively straightforward. Hopefully we get some wild and unpredictable results in this second round.
You mentioned the trading element. Just talk our viewers through what happened today in terms of there was a little window where you could trade some picks, of course, before the draft resumes tonight.
Yeah, that's been going on as we're speaking through the last little period as well, but no trades have been done. And I don't expect too much trading to be done in terms of clubs wanting to move out their future picks to get into this year. I think we'll see Gold Coast be active again on the trade front because they're done in terms of their draft selections. They took 4 boys last night who found their way to the Suns, of course, through the academy. Now they have some leftover picks that they aren't going to use. So we know that clubs will potentially be able to buy back them for some future selections as well. So that's something to keep an eye at across the night as well. And there might be a couple of players that slip through as well that other clubs want to buy into the top of the pool. Unlike previous years where the start of the second round has been 19 or pick 20, it's 10 picks deeper tonight. So that means that we expect probably that the clubs right at the top would most likely be picking.
All right, well, we have about 30 minutes until proceedings resume here during the 2023 AFL draft. Let's take this opportunity now just to look at the draft order, starting with the second round. Obviously, we talked about the 29 picks that went last night. So it starts at pick 30. That's West Coast. They have the first pick on night 2 of the draft. They have another one a little bit later on. And then, of course, 4 clubs didn't make selections last night. So Richmond, Fremantle and Brisbane will make their first selections in this round 2. Port Adelaide fans, unfortunately, will just need to wait a little bit longer because they were the other club that is yet to make a selection this year's draft. What do you like about this round 2?
Well, Brisbane traded up to get into this spot as well with their deal with Gold Coast last night, so that one gives them a chance. And also we see Fremantle with those 2 selections as well, 38 and 41, so they'll be pretty active, of course, too. Now, West Coast have some options, don't they, right at the top? They had pick 1, of course, last night, where they took Harley Reid. What do they do at pick 30? I think Lance Collard would have been right in the mix for that selection had he got through last night. In the end, the Saints grabbed him a couple of spots before this. They have some options here. Archer Reed's one that has been linked there as well, a tall forward from the Gippsland Power. Mitch Edwards is likely to be taken around that part of the draft, I think early-ish tonight. Don't know if he's the right fit for them or not, given they took Harry Barnett last year. Harvey Johnston's got some interest for them. Not sure if that's for this pick or later on as well. So there's a few names that are floating about at that very top end. Archer Reed, Logan Morris, also potentially in the mix for the Lions, the one after this too.
Okay, we will talk about some of those prospects that remain on the draft board in just a moment, but we're going to take this opportunity to head out to Marvel Stadium because at the moment there are no draftees, draft hopefuls, their family and friends. It's a little bit of a different scene there tonight. It's just the clubs, and a familiar face for us is Sarah Ollie, who is out there. And Sarah, you did an amazing job last night, so well done to you with those interviews. What's in store for us tonight at Marvel?
Well, we are back at Marvel, Nat, but up on the concourse, not down in the Victory Room. That's where we were last night. Of course, a bit of a vibe because an initiative of new CEO Andrew Dillon was to bring in friends along with family, and it was a real party atmosphere. There was a lot of vibrancy in the room, and actually, when I left last night, there was music pumping. They were playing Eagle Rock, perhaps a nod to the West Coast Eagles and indeed their number one pick in Harley Reid. But today I'm up on the concourse level. This is a level that Riley and Cal would know. It's where they would write their match reports. Tonight, this is where the clubs are, and just in front of me is where the media are, mainly print media at the moment. I can see our very own Josh Gabelich, and I'll tell you what else I can also see. Some good catering. There's sandwiches on offer, and there's party pies and sausage rolls. In fact, the waft of the party pies and the sausage rolls is coming through right now. So I'm going to love you and leave you and get stuck in. It should be a big night too.
Thanks, Sarah. Save us some treats. And Cal Toomey loves nothing more than a free feed when it comes to going out and watching all the under-18s games, of course, throughout the year. What's the best free feed that you had this year?
Oh, all of the schools turn it on. They do a good spread at halftime most of these games. So
you don't want to choose a favourite, do you?
I can't complain with any food that's available. Just had a bit of catering in here as well, so that was good as well.
Thank you, Diana.
We're ready to go.
All right, well, what a thrill it was for so many of last night's draftees to have their name called out, of course, at Marvel Stadium with their friends and families all around them. And the next minute, they're up on stage receiving their jumper for the very first time. It was certainly a moment they won't forget.
Harley Reid. Colby McKercher. Jed Walter. Zane Dersma. Nick Watson. Riley Sanders. Caleb Windsor. Daniel Curtin. Ethan Reid. Nate Caddy. Connor O'Sullivan. Phoenix Gothard. Jake Rogers. Jordan Croft. James Leake. Darcy Wilson. William McKay. Will Graham. Oscar Ryan.
Life-changing moments there for last night's draft class. And this is a photo taken by our very own Mick Wilson, an award-winning photographer at the AFL, and that is an absolute cracker, that picture. One for the pool room. Riley, if you had to have your jumper presented, if you got drafted, who would you want to present your jumper?
Who am I getting picked by?
Carlton.
Cooter. I think Cooter. It was pretty cool to see there Phoenix Gothard and Oscar Ryan as well, two guys that weren't officially invited to the night as draftees. They went as part of the Murray Bushrangers party, both of them, and get picked throughout the night, perhaps a little bit unexpectedly. And And
You're
getting
throwing on a
called up.
polo
throwing on a
last
polo,
minute. I
feeding
love it.
Scothard as he went up there. That was all pretty cool. So, yeah, very nice to see.
Completely messed up his hair, thanking Scothard, and he'd worked very hard on that, I'm sure. Let's just recap. In case you missed it, you've been living under a rock. This is what happened in night one of the draft for 2023, and it all started with West Coast. They had a need for Reed, Cal.
That's right.
And they took Harley.
That's right. He's gone west. Matty Lloyd for me, my jumper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You just wanted to get that in?
Like Elijah Sardis. Yeah, last night it was to script to a degree at the top. Harley Reid, Colby McKercher and Zane Desma, the two Roos, obviously the bid for Jed Walter. Nick Watson there at the Hawks. That was a big call between Watson and Curtin. They went with a small forward who's local to them and a gun. Riley Sanders was pretty much seen as a lock at the Dogs, whichever way it spat out in the end. The Demons grabbed Caleb Windsor as one of their two early picks. Colton Tholstrup, their other one. The Giants did some moving around, Riley. They grabbed Phoenix Gothard there, and then also James Leake as well. Where'd the pick end up? There it is, 17. And they did move around. I mean, that's why it's kind of funny to keep track of this. The names that everyone kind of expected, but there was some shifting around the board from the Giants, and they were active in that. They got their two priorities, didn't they? They were tossing up whether to grab Leake first. In the end, he got through a couple of selections. Will Green went to the Swans. The Daniel Curtin decision from Adelaide to push up the board, grab that pick that was obviously in demand from a lot of clubs was a big one. But you had to pay a price to do it, and I think they made a really good move to add to their defensive group coming forward.
How much do you think West Coast would have been working the phones even after Adelaide got that pick? Because we spoke, of course, at the top of the show last night around clubs like Adelaide, they weren't just looking at it to get pick 8 to grab Dan Curtin. They were looking at it to potentially trade into next year's draft and maybe land the pick 1 in next year's draft if West Coast gave up a future one.
West Coast had a crack at that too. They wanted themselves, obviously, with the Giants. They were offering that future first-round pick. And then, of course, when Adelaide got it, they were keen to get it again. But in the end, they chose. And I think that's important for their list build as well, the Crows, to keep picking. They've got some stars, and we had Hamish Ogilvie on the show yesterday in the Gettable Countdown.
Yeah.
And they've got some stars over the last few years through the draft, and to get another one, I think, tops off their build, particularly key position. Caddy as well at the Bombers, so that one was a priority for them. They traded up just a spot, but paid that second-round pick just to move up a spot and guarantee it was their guy. Connor O'Sullivan clearly wasn't going to be taken ahead of the Bombers for Caddy, but that was their decision as well. Croft, another bid for them. Jake Rogers obviously going to the Suns, and Will Graham, their fourth Suns academy player. And then the Kangaroos really got going, didn't they, in this back half? So Taylor Goad, the ruckman there, they got in first before Adelaide chose Charlie Edwards. Adelaide did have some interest in Taylor Goad, the local ruckman. They took a range of players, the Roos. They pure midfielder forward, ruck and Taylor Goad, key defender there in Will Dawson, and Riley Hardiman, a running half back. So there was a bit of a mix, and then, as you say, Oscar Ryan was probably the surprise in how early he was taking, a medium defender, and then Ashton Moyer. And we just had a bit of a look at something Carlton put up. Clearly that was a target for them as well. They're really keen for him to get through. Lance Collard had some love in this part of the draft. The Magpies had certainly done their work on him more recently. They went more local for their turn of speed in Harry DiMattia. And then the Eagles now pick tonight. And as I said, I think Archer Reed's a really strong chance to be the first pick tonight, and then potentially Logan Morris after that to the Brisbane Lions.
Who is the big winner for yours? I mean, is it hard to look past the Kangaroos given
yes.
that many picks?
Yeah, it is. It is. And look, they made the most of their situation, didn't they? The AFL assistance package, and obviously the Dersma pick being the Ben Mackay compensation pick that they got for him going to the Bombers as a free agent. So I loved what they were able to do. Only time will tell on the selections making it or not for all of these clubs, but the fact they got a mix and backed in themselves to, positionally they might have needed a key defender or a key position player, maybe more than a midfielder or a forward, but you can't overtake class, and Zane Desma's got that, and he is still different to what they've got, Riley. Yeah,
he certainly is in that forward mix, and be a really good foil for Nick Larkey in the years to come. I loved what Essendon did. Getting aggressive. You've got pick 11. You know there's a slight chance maybe that Geelong might take Nate Caddy at pick 10 before you. So they trade off pick 31. Just put that pick down. You move up one spot, but you 100% guarantee that you get the bloke that you want in Nate Caddy. The other thing they do, they've lacked that type of player for so long, Cal, haven't they?
They have. And they've taken some tools in different parts of the draft over the last couple of years. Obviously, Zach Reid in defence. Nick Cox, a bit of an everywhere man, still working out where his best spot is. But a pure medium key forward
Yeah.
who can play like he does. Nate Caddy, he's got the stretch. But yeah, he's 192, 193, so he might not be the big key forward, but he's got the stretch overhead that's really impressive. His wingspan, I think, is extraordinary. So yeah, they did go up one spot, but they also bought the pick to make sure that no one else could buy the pick off
Yes.
Geelong.
Yeah.
So there was other interest in it. So you're not just competing with Geelong for the player, you're competing with other clubs to get up as well. So and that's something worth considering. And also West Coast were throwing around their future first as well and having a look at Caddy too.
Yeah, I was just about to say that Caddy was certainly someone in West Coast eyes, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And yeah, I like the variation of the top of this year's draft,
Yeah.
and that's always been the case. I mean, we look at 12 months ahead, and there's midfielders aplenty. I think that's come into some of the thinking as well for some of the decision making as well. I mean, it's pretty rare to see a couple of ruckmen get opportunities so early as well in Will Green and also Taylor Goad. We'll see Mitch Edwards probably over the next few selections as well get an opportunity too. So I think the way they were able to mix around the picks and clubs had their options to fill whatever they wanted.
It was an intriguing night one of the 2023 AFL draft. We're going to turn our focus to night two and take a look at some of the top prospects. And we're going to start with the man that you mentioned earlier, Cal, in Archie Roberts, attacking a defender from the Sandringham Dragons. A very good decision maker. He was named in the All-Australian Under-18s team and one of the contenders to go in this first pick on the second night.
Yeah, he's got interest from West Coast. I think it most likely ends up with another Archie in Archer Reid, but Archie Roberts is a half-back for the Sandringham Dragons, played in their premiership this year and last, and can use the footy really well off half-back and make his decisions and set up the play. He played for Vic Metro, also played for Haileybury College under Matty Lloyd. That's two Lloydie references so far tonight, see how many more I can get in. And one of the best and fairest there in a premiership year. So he's had a really consistent season and consistent campaign over 2 years now. So he's definitely got love and interest from this point onwards.
Yep.
I think he gets picked somewhere in the first 15 or so selections tonight.
All right, we'll continue this chat in just a moment. But with Sarah Ollie now over at Marvel Stadium is Adelaide's National Recruiting Manager in Hamish Ogilvie.
Hamish, a really wild day yesterday. You blew the order open. We will get to that shortly, the pick 8, the rise up. But firstly, talk us through your day because you had a bit of a road trip.
I've had a great day, Sarah. The most enjoyable part of the job is to get to go and see the families the day after the draft. In the old days, we used to do it on the night and get home very late. So went and saw Charlie Edwards and his family today just out of Bendigo, and the joy on their faces and the siblings and how proud they are as parents. And then we went up to Shepparton to see Oscar Ryan's family again, which is always a pleasure. They're such great people. So it was a really good day.
It certainly is what it's all about. I guess you couldn't get over to WA to see Dan Curtin's family, but let's talk about that trade up to pick 8 because it really was a bombshell move. When did you know that it could potentially materialise?
Probably about 3 or 4 days ago we started to plan it out, but we didn't know it was really solid at that stage. Even I must admit when I went in yesterday morning I wasn't 100% sure we were ready for it, but I just didn't know how strong the North Melbourne interest was with Clarko obviously being in Perth. So we were prepared and credit to our guys. They did an unbelievable job with the trade and having the numbers ready and doing the work on that. So we've got good people around us to help get that done. People that are far smarter than me with the numbers, so it's easy for us to sit there and pick the player, but those guys with the Giants, and credit to the Giants, they were great to deal with, so it worked really well. And to have that pick with Dan, we gave up a bit, but we were still able to have 2 more picks in the first round after him. That was a really strong result for us.
And Cal dubbed it the curtain call. What is it about Dan? What makes him such a special player? Because a lot of the intrigue as well was around his versatility and where he could end up playing.
Yeah, well, we've always liked him as a 15, 16-year-old as a forward, and that's where he played. So he graduated into the defence, and we love the senior form at Subiaco, where Claremont, and I saw him in a final against Subiaco, where the coach used him everywhere. So as an 18-year-old in a big league final, and it was a really tough game, that was sort of the clincher, but at that stage we thought, we're never going to get to see him. But the beauty of future trading and live trading, we got a look and we were able to get up enough to get him, so we're very lucky and we're very pleased.
Do you have an idea, though, where he will play?
I think he might start back. I mean, a 197 mid, the game hasn't seen too many of those. I guess Paddy Cripps is the closest thing to it. So I think we'll give him some time to start back and use his kicking and athleticism and see. But that'll be up to Dan now and the coaches. He's got to do the work and drive his career, but Nixie's pretty happy.
All right, Nat, Cal Riley, over to you.
Hamish, how tempted were you to trade that pick on to West Coast for the future first? How much of a discussion was that internally?
We discussed it, Cal. We made the decision in the morning that he was our man and we were going to take him if we could get it done. And to be honest, we had the pick in before the phone even rang, so we didn't entertain it in the end.
He's a good player. In terms of that jostling to get up, those last couple of days, we had you on the show yesterday afternoon. You seemed a little bit stressed, a little bit tense about how it was all playing out. There was a race for the pick, wasn't there?
Well, we presented to the coach, CEO, GM, board director Mark Rasciuto about 1 o'clock, between 1 and 2. So I had to get that done before I came to see you. So that's why I was a little bit cranky. But again, the guys did a great job. So we had made the decision by that time. If we could get it done and work with the Giants, we were going to take Dan and keep him.
Hamish, one of the great joys of the night was seeing the guys that weren't invited, but they were still there with their mates, and one of them was Oscar Ryan. Did you actually know he was going to be in the room beforehand when you thought you might be a chance of taking him?
Yeah, we did, and we knew we were a chance to take him too. So we met Connor O'Sullivan a couple of weeks earlier, and he told us who was coming down with him. So we knew, and at that time when we met Connor, we were pretty sure that we were going to try and pick Oscar at some stage. We would have had him a fair bit higher than a lot of people expected. And we knew he was in the room, so we sent Nixie and Dorse down with 2 picks to go with a bit of a plan to try and just surprise him. But I have heard today that there was a few texts flying around and a few of our own players might have tipped Jake Saligo off, who was in the room with Nick Watson, and it got to Oscar Ryan pretty quick. So I think he might have actually even known before Nixie got to him.
Oh, that's fantastic. And just before we let you go, Hamish, I want to ask, yesterday you tried to retire our man Cal Toomey here. You got 27 out of 29. Do you think the Phantom draft is back? Is it still alive?
I think you're my man now, Riley. You've jumped ahead of him because he's claiming the Gold Coast picks as numbers. The Academy picks, you can't claim those as stats. So you're number 1 again, Riley, and Cal's gone to number 2.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Well, I'm not sure, Hamish, you're going to get asked back on Gettable in 2024.
No, that's
I think
what he wants.
Cal...
No, we are going to ask you back on.
Cal calls the shot. Hamish, we absolutely love what you guys have done in the draft on night 1. Go and enjoy tonight because, I dare say you'll be sitting back relaxing tonight, or are you going to get involved again?
We're having a sweep, and whoever gets the most picks correct gets the Cal Toomey Award.
Enjoy. I can't wait to see how that ends up for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Oh, dear, Cal.
That's okay.
You've been usurped.
27 out of 29.
It's a team effort. We all make each other better.
It's not a team effort, it's all you. No, I'm joking. Let's talk about some of these prospects that hopefully will get drafted tonight. Lumon Lawal, we spoke about him last night, and obviously an incredible story is he's from Warrnambool, tied to the Bulldogs Next Generation Academy, but a good chance of getting selected inside the top 40 tonight, Cal.
Yeah, he'll be in the mix. There's no doubt about that. And he had a pretty solid season playing for the Greater Western Victoria Rebels and also Vic Country. He's rebounding half back. He can lock down as well. Got a little bit of turn of pace as well. Uses the ball pretty nicely too. So, look, he's a member of the Dogs Next Generation Academy. So, as Nat says, they can't match a bid within the next 10 picks until pick 40, and then they will be able to match a bid after that, where I think they would probably match a bid if it's one of their last 2 or 3 selections. So I think that's the ideal scenario for them. But there is a chance that he gets a bit of interest before then. The Giants also had him in their mix a little bit earlier in the draft, depending on how things play out for them too.
It's going to be an interesting night for those couple of NGA-tied players in terms of, we've mentioned Mitch Edwards a couple of times throughout the night, whether or not he gets beyond pick 40 and goes to Fremantle. The Wall gets to the Bulldogs after pick 40, potentially Tau Giath as well to Hawthorn. So it's only 11 picks now. So there's actually not that many now.
We talk about the academy bids. It's helped these clubs get a chance to pick in these guys and get them through to number 40. So where I thought Giath was a very small chance or slim chance to actually get to the Hawks. I think now I'm not going to say it's looking likely, but it's definitely well in sight for them.
Don't get me excited,
so
Cal.
he's a pretty talented player. Richmond could be a threat at their selection.
Okay, let's take a look at Jack Deleen now. He's a South Australian forward, 181 centimetres. One thing is for sure, knows how to kick a goal.
Oh, does he ever? He's kicked goals for fun over 3 years now. He is a goal sneak with real class, and he's done that at different levels too. So he just continues to hit the scoreboard. He had a couple of really good games in the championships. This was one of them, playing against Big Country. He kicked 4 goals in another game as well against WA, and manages to find his way around the goals through the pockets, through snaps, through ground level. He's a bit of a jack in the box as well with his overhead marking too. So he can do it. He's kicked 55 goals this season in 23 games. So again, just has that nous around goal. Where he fits in, he's a different type of options than some of the other small forwards who've previously been picked over the last night. So a different type, but I do think there's an opportunity for him somewhere in the second half of the draft.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where he gets picked. Good night for South Australia in the end. Last night with Will McCabe and then Ashton Moore going in the draft. There was
Taylor Goad.
Another one. There was a bit of commentary in the lead up in terms of how many would actually get picked inside that first round, but managed to get 3 selections, so very good.
And what about Tasmania too? Because I reckon in past years we haven't had that many Tassie prospects actually drafted. So this is good news for them, and hopefully they get their team, their AFL team, in a couple of years' time.
Tasmania and also, of course, Queensland, given 4 academy players for the Suns, then Caden Cleary from the Swans Academy, and then you throw in the 3 Tassie boys. Well, what's that? We're hitting 8 players out of the Allies, which is an incredible effort for a team that won the championships. And we'll probably see more again tonight as well. I mean, Ari Schoenmaker's one from the Tasmanian group that could get selected in the next few selections as well. He'll be an interesting player because he's got that weapon with the left foot. How far can he go, and how much of a chance is he in these next 10 picks?
And then there's a couple more Allies boys in terms of Connor O'Sullivan and Phoenix Gothard and those types who are from the border region there. So, yeah, really good night for Allies football after their championships win earlier this season, their first ever national title.
So if you're a club that's looking for a strong marking key forward, then Logan Morris could be your man. Kicked 30 goals from his 10 outings, I think, at Western Jets level, and was pretty strong.
Yeah, he's a lead-up player. He's in that Brody Myercheck type of mould, I would say. He's a contested marking player who is so good in the air. He reads the ball really well when it's coming down to him, and can use his body nicely too. So, yeah, he's a different type of key forward. He's not going to be the bash and crash player, probably the lead-up player, a bit of a Kyle Langford type of style to his game, and he finishes really well too. So, look, there's a fair bit to like about Logan Morris's application. I think he's got some takers in potentially the first couple of picks tonight. I think Brisbane has been weighing him up pretty strongly for their pick.
And it was that game against Western Australia that we saw heaps of highlights from at RSEA Park, where he really made his mark as a forward this year. He'd actually been played in defence the first couple of months of the season, and it wasn't a bit of a slower start to the year for him, given he was playing in a position that he hadn't played much footy in. But then he went forward in that national championships game, kicked a few goals, presented really well in the lead, and I think that's what really sparked the second half of his campaign.
Well, draft night is one of my favourite nights on the AFL calendar. It's a little bit like Christmas, the sheer joy, excitement that you see from all of the draft hopefuls when their names are called out, and the reactions last night were absolutely priceless. Let's relive some of these life-changing moments.
Every heart beats true for the red, gold and blue. Every sing this song for you. What we say, you're gold and reds and peace. We got your eye on the red, gold and blue.
Select Ashton.
Ashton, holy, how are you, buddy? How you doing? What's going on?
Looking for you, mate. God, thank you.
You haven't done one of these yet?
No, I haven't. Oh my God, that's unreal.
Hey Harry, how are you, buddy? Yeah, congratulations, mate. appreciate it so much. It was one of my mate's mums. She had along for good luck.
Yeah.
Lucky enough to pull out the name.
Pretty sure you're going to be number 13.
Am I?
Yeah. Is that right? Yeah, 13, mate. Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely love those clips on social. Harry Di Mattia, if I can get that out, with Craig McRae. Imagine that just popping up on your face. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. And now we see the Eagles on the clock at what they do. So another dream is about to be made as well. We've been speaking about Archer Reid and the possibility of him being one of the guys in the
Wasted
mix.
much time, have they? Kelly Pick's already in.
Well, they've had all day to think about it. And I think we probably will see a little bit more of that across tonight as well. As the draft gets a little bit deeper, some of these guys that there isn't as much fighting over for, they can just go bang and dial it in.
Well, luckily for everyone playing along at home, we have our, if this does drag out a little bit, we've still got our snack bowl here. It's kind of my snack bowl, but we've got Maltesers, we've got some random bits of chocolate, so
yeah, I
we're
learned
playing
my lesson.
chocolate bingo at some point tonight. It's definitely going to be fueling us for the next couple of hours or so. As the first pick is in for night 2 of the 2023 AFL draft, and West Coast with pick 30 have selected Archer Reid, 203 odd centimetres. He's a man mountain.
He is, and this is one of his better games, playing for Vic Country here against Vic Metro towards the end of the championships for that level. I think that's where we started to see some of his better form, and his little patch after that, we saw some of the contested marking, which he can do so well. He's a nice kick of the footy too, Riley. He's ball use for a player his size is a real trait and attribute for him. So he goes to the Eagles as a player who will be able to pinch hit in the ruck. There's probably going to be a part of his game in doing that, but he is predominantly a key forward. He's the younger brother, of course, of Zach Reid at the Bombers.
And there's a trade that you'd anticipated beforehand, in the sense that the Gold Coast Suns have so many of those picks in that region, which they're not going to use anymore. They can get rid of them. So they've traded 51 for a round 4 pick in 2024. So the Brisbane Lions, will be back on the clock in just a few picks, actually.
Yeah, that's right. And, well, they've got a few to make tonight, and now they have their own decision to make too. So Archer Reid goes there. And just on Archer Reid very quickly, Brad Scott was sitting in that seat a couple of days ago, and Gettable said Zach Reid is now 205 centimetres. So we wait and see if Archer has a little bit of growing to do as well. Not that he has much more he could possibly be doing, but he's a really exciting size.
And just on Archer Reid as well, West Coast have got Oscar Allen, obviously, who's one of the best young key forwards in the competition at the moment, even in a side that's been struggling over the last couple of years, but have probably lacked that key forward foil for Oscar Allen. So this is probably a position that they've identified as being someone they could nab to help Oscar Allen in his future years.
The other part too, worth noting, and this doesn't come into considerations at pick 30, but he is a Vic Country teammate, of course, of Harley Reid, and been a teammate of his throughout the journey as well. So you get to know that, and Harley goes over with someone who's got a relationship with already as well, which obviously helps that settling in process.
So the Brisbane Lions are now on the clock for the first time in the 2023 AFL draft. They were one of 4 clubs that didn't make a selection last night. So good times for the Brisbane Lions, Fremantle, Richmond and Port Adelaide. Port fans, though, are going to have to wait a little bit longer at this point in the draft. But what do Brisbane need, Riley, if you're looking at their list?
Well, I wonder if they can get a bit creative with these picks, in the sense that they know they got Will Ashcroft as a father-son last year, and they're going to get Levi Ashcroft, who could be a potential number 1 chance in 2024. So they've got 2 midfielders that they don't have to worry about. So I wonder if they can get creative with these picks, target some key position players, target some need areas for them, as opposed to targeting in the midfield area.
I think the key position players is what they've been looking for with one of these earlier selections that they've got, and this ability to shift up the board, which they did last night with the Gold Coast deal, put them in the range of some players who probably otherwise wouldn't have got there. So they've had an option to choose one of the tools, I think.
Okay, well, the pick is in as we wait for official confirmation of who that might be. And there you have it with pick number 31. The Brisbane Lions have selected Logan Morrison, as we just spoke about, that really tall, strong marking forward at 191 centimetres, and played a couple of games in the VFL too, I believe, for Werribee, Cal.
Well, he's able to hit the scoreboard, and as I said before, he's think Kyle Langford. That's the type of player he can be. So I think he's probably up there alongside Zane Dersma as one of the best contested marks in the draft pool. So it's an acquisition that can probably play. They've just lost Jack Gunston. He could probably be that type of player in the future. So that's what they'll be hoping for the Lions in the coming seasons. Look, he's not going to have to be rushed through anytime soon, but 192 centimetres, sticky hands. It's a nice starting point as a tall forward.
You mentioned not having to be rushed through. Of course, they've got Eric Hipwood and Joe Danaher who helped spearhead them through to that grand final. And then they added Brendan Ryan, who's not a young player. I mean, it's going to be his first pre-season this summer, but he's 26 years old next year. So he's an experienced player. It's got a lot of state league footy under his belt as well. So, yeah, they're going to have time to really develop Logan Morris over the next couple of years and turn him into exactly the type of footballer they want him to become.
Be interesting what the Cats do here.
Yeah.
Do they look tall, given they've already got Connor O'Sullivan? Do they go bang bang with maybe Ollie Murphy? Is he an option for them? Could they go for a runner in Joel Frazier, who's obviously played some wing footy for the Greater Western Victoria Rebels throughout earlier this season and had some massive games at the start of the year as well in particular. So he could be a point of difference in terms of their run. Do they address that need and area? So there's a few different options there. George Stevens has had some love from them as well. He potentially could be available later on in the draft, but played for their VFL side as well.
Geelong's list is at a really interesting point, isn't it, Riley? How do you assess it at this point? Because they won the flag last year and then this season didn't make the finals. Where are they at?
I think they've got holes to fill. And I mean, I think they're clearly, I think, one or two midfielders short, but they've addressed that via trades over the last couple of years when they brought in players like Tanner Bruin and
Jai Clark
as well during the draft last year. They brought in a few midfielders there. So key defence, they addressed last night with Connor O'Sullivan. Sava Radaglia goes out of the team and goes to Port Adelaide. But do they need a key forward as well? Because Tom Hawkins is 36 next year. Jeremy Cameron's 31 next year. These guys are getting on in their careers. So there's a couple of areas that do need addressing, even though they've got a really strong core under their belt.
And as we know, key forwards often take a little bit longer to develop. So if you can get one now, a few years maybe learning under Tom Hawkins.
Another one that they could look at here is Angus Hasty. So he's a half-back from the Falcons.
Yep.
Got some speed and toe and played for big country as well. So he's a player that has had some interest around this part of the draft, that sort of 30 to 40 range. There's a few different clubs that have looked at him, and the Cats could have a bit of a ping at him too.
In terms of bidding, while the Cats still have a couple of minutes left on the clock, there's a couple of father-son selections maybe that are there, and an academy, a Sydney Swans academy player too.
Yeah, Lockie Kabor later potentially, but I think that's probably more rookie chance for him.
Okay.
And Kynan Brown is eligible to join Melbourne as a father-son rookie, so if a bid comes in for him tonight, the D's won't be able to match it, but he can also automatically join their list if he's not drafted tonight and go through as a rookie tomorrow. So he's a sure bet to be drafted at some point. It's a good result for him, and I think it's more likely, though, that we see him get through to the Demons in the rookie draft tomorrow.
It is interesting the fact that they're taking... they've almost been on the clock for 4 minutes now and there's only been 2 picks, and whether or not that gives an indication as to them potentially working the phones, trying to see what could be out there from a trade perspective.
They could trade around. Oh, no. They've
taken someone.
They've picked. Interesting. So they have a look now. Which way do they go? There's been different options for them available, hasn't there? And we've looked at rucks, we've looked at tall backs, we've looked at runners, midfielders. I think there's a different blend of the group here that they could have a bit of a gaze to.
Yeah.
All right, well, we wait and see what they do. The pick is in, and with pick 32, Geelong have selected Mitch Edwards, of course, great name, Edwards, but a very tall player because he is a ruck and a really athletic player at that, Cal.
Well, he's clearly not related to you then.
I was a good athlete in my day.
I meant the height. 206 centimetres. 206 centimetres. I wasn't doubting your athleticism. No, this is a kid that we saw last year for WA playing the championships and this season as well. Just given that mobility and skill and finesse that he does have, he's a player that's going to take some time, but they've obviously got some real faith and hopes in Toby Conway as well, Riley, already. That was a pick around this point of the draft a couple of seasons ago. Now they go and bring in Mitch Edwards, and they've always been open to bring in rucks. They do it. They're a club that does pick their rucks and have a crack with them. So he is a member of the Freo Next Generation Academy. I think the likelihood was that the Dockers would see what happens if you got through past 40. He's not exactly been a list need for the Dockers either, as they go long term with Luke Jackson and also Sean Darcy most likely. So it's going to be interesting. And
they've also got Shannon Neal, the Cats as well, another taller type that they've put some years into developing as well. So they've got a good young core of rucks, but I know they really rate Toby Conway quite highly. So whether or not they can still play two ruckmen going forward into the future, but a really interesting pick for them, and one that perhaps going into it, I didn't think it was their biggest list need, but they've got picks later in the draft where they could fill positional needs for them.
And he's a super competitive kid too. I think he's a middle child, grew up with 2 brothers, so I think it's a pretty competitive household, and loves watching Tim English and Max Gorn go about it. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good thing a good couple of players to
He's got
model
some
your
good
game
ruck
on.
craft.
Yes.
And you know, ruck craft, it's important in the position. You can't just be tall, you need to be good at it,
Yep.
and he does have some real traits around there. The Saints now,
Yes.
on the call,
What do
they
they
were
do?
interested in Mitch Edwards, there's no doubt there. So whether they go with Joel Frazier, who's been an option for them with one of their selections, they've obviously moved into this pick through their trading with Gold Coast, so they're going to end up with 3 picks inside 33. Should they use it? There's been some interest around this point of the draft.
Okay.
North Melbourne's had a look at getting back in as well, so do they grab it if a player is available? Angus Hastie would be another contender here to add to the speed that they've already brought through in Darcy Wilson and Lance Collard as well.
It was clearly an area that they identified as being in need of in terms of that speed and that forward half presence that you mentioned there, Cal, with Darcy Wilson and Lance Collard. So they've addressed that on the first night of the draft.
Yep.
Wonder if they go different here or if they continue to take a real speed focus into this thing. And they've brought Liam Henry into the football club over the summer, someone who had some outside run for them on a wing throughout the season as well. So it's clearly an area of their list build they've addressed, and it'll be interesting to see if they continue addressing it here.
Archie Roberts also trained at the footy club at the Saints earlier this year too as part of the AFL Academy. Could he be a contender at this point? So there's different names and different types who are going to be available to them. Clay Hall's another midfielder, bigger body player who just keeps playing well. He played most games and consistently throughout this season in WA and for the West Australian state team. So he's another option, I think, at this range of the draft.
Do you see, Riley, the Saints taking another step again in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think they certainly can. They bring in Liam Henry and Paddy Dow via trades. They get 2 really good players last night, Darcy Wilson and Lance Collard as well. I think the Jade Gresham loss will be a significant one for them. I think he's a pretty good player for them over a long period of time. Obviously, 2023 wasn't his best year, but it's been an area they're going to that they've had to address, and they certainly did last night, as we mentioned. Wilson and Collard, 2 forward half players.
Yep.
As we say, the pick is in for St Kilda, and we'll see who they go with.
Okay, let's see what they do here. And Laura Kane tonight, we should say, is reading out the selections. So Andrew Dillon, the AFL CEO, did that last night, but the Executive GM of football, and Laura Kane is doing that tonight, which is absolutely fabulous. And with pick number 33, the Saints have selected Angus Hastie, who we mentioned before, about 190 centimetres, and a defender from the Geelong Falcons.
Yeah, and he's got the pace, and look at it out of the back line here. Takes a bounce, has a run with the ball. We've seen this a lot throughout the season for the Falcons. His ball use is strong as well. I think you can see him bounding off half-back at Marvel Stadium under Ross Lyon too, and gives them some real dash out of that part of the ground as well. As you look at their different players already there, with Jack Sinclair, of course, one of the best at it in the AFL. So, yeah, Angus Hastie was terrific late in the year as well with a game against the Sandringham Dragons. That was one of his better performances too in a final. And then at the Combine, he was 3rd best for the agility test. So he's got that lateral movement to his game.
I really like this pick, and I really like what they've been able to do with their first 3 picks in terms of getting some run into that side. Darcy Wilson, Lance Collard, now Angus Hastie. And you mentioned Jack Sinclair there, but they've also managed to bring in Liam Henry over the summer, who we've talked about a fair bit tonight as well, in terms of bringing that outside run and class and speed. And they've also got Nazai Wanganeen-Malone, who's had a really good start to his career and played really well as well. So that's three players tonight, his career and played really well as well. So that's three players tonight over the last couple of nights they bring in that will just add to what they've already got.
Okay, so the Blues here now have a pick. There's some options that I think they were looking at as well in the past. Couple of picks, I think we would have seen them have a look at Mitch Edwards if he was there. They was taken Ashton Moore a few picks ago as well. I think Cooper Simpson would be in the mix here, a midfielder from the Dandenong Stingrays, midfielder forward, and also Matt Carroll, I think, would be a contender here as well. Some pace off half-back. He also had some interest there from St Kilda as well around here with these picks. So they've obviously made the pick now. We'll wait and see.
All right, we will see what Carlton do with this pick. Riley, they had such a great year this year, a preliminary final, and I know big hopes because they've got a lot of primetime fixtures when it comes to the 2024 season, don't they?
Yeah, they certainly
Wouldn't
do.
want to disappoint.
I think top 4 is clearly the aim for Carlton in 2024 now, and get that landing spot and try trying to cement themselves as a top 4 team long term, as we see they've taken Billy Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay, Murray Bushrangers?
No, the Dandenong Stingrays.
No, okay.
He's the Dandenong Dasher. He plays off halfback with real, genuine run and gun. And look, they obviously had some other contenders here, and Matt Carroll was one of them, but they've gone with Billy Wilson, who consistently was able to be the kick-out man and the run and gun player for the Stingrays, and also Vic Country. Here we see some of his best work here from halfback. Does that fit a bit of a need for them too, Riley, given what they've already got in the group?
I think they've got obviously a number of smaller, medium types of rebounding halfbacks, but they're at a stage of their development now where those players are really experienced and a fair way into their career. Nick Newman, Sam Doherty, Adam Sard, Zach Williams is another one, but he's coming off an ACL. So they're either really experienced players or players that are beyond 30 now. So they definitely need a depth in this area. And they brought in Lockie Cowan last year, who's another player in this type of mould. So, but these types of players are clearly pivotal to how Carlton have wanted to set up under Michael Voss in terms of being able to provide some run and dash off half back. So while there's a number of them, it's good to bring in another couple of exciting ones and prepare for the future as well.
So Richmond are on the
first time
clock, and this
draft.
this is the first time they're getting to flex their muscles and see what they bring. Cal, who do you think's around the mark, and what do they need, the Tigers?
I think they would have looked at Archer Reid and Logan Morris if they were there as taller options. Now, with those two gone, I'm not sure if there's a tall in this bracket. Liam Fawcett's a player who's got some interest for them, potentially here or potentially later as well. He's a key forward from South Australia. Joel Frazier is another who they've spent some time on. George Stevens, a bigger-bodied midfielder. They could have a look at Luman Lual as well here, and as well Tal Giath. I think this is probably the bid or the potential club that could snap him up before he gets to Hawthorn. So that's a bit of a watch as well. But different mix of players there. Lockie Smith is another player too, a ruckman from the Gippsland Power that they could look at.
What do you think? Where do you think Richmond are at right now? We've got a new coach.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, they're in a sort of rebuilding phase now under Adam Uze, who comes to the club, but they're still got the 8th oldest list in the competition, so they're about middle of the road. They need to start redeveloping. It's really hard, and we asked Matt Clark, their national recruiting manager, about this on Draft Countdown when we had him on earlier last week, in the sense that they've only had one top 15 pick in the last 8 years, and that was Josh Gibcus. So they haven't been able to bring in top-end talent through the draft, and a lot of that is based on the fact that they've been one of the most successful sides in that period. They've won 3 flags in that period. So it has been hard for them to bring in real A-grade quality. They lost their first-round picks last year and this year by bringing in first Tim Taranto with their picks last year and then Jacob Hopper with their picks this year. So it's been hard for them to get into that stage of the draft again, but they're a club that just needs to find one. And they've been really good. I mean, you look at their grand final sides from those seasons in 17, 19 and 20. A lot of them were later picks and rookies.
Yeah.
I mean, Jaden Short's a premiership player, a best and fairest in a premiership team as a rookie. So they've been able to find diamonds in the rough later in the draft, so they'll be confident again.
Do you feel like this year it's more likely you could find a diamond in the rough, given the fact that COVID interrupted so much of these kids' development? So there's going to be kids that just develop a little bit later because of that.
This is probably the last of that group, I think, and probably that 15, 16-year-old period, 2020 and 2021, they were interrupted. This is probably the last COVID hit draft class, I would say. So clubs do have that view that there are some players who might be a few more hard to find players and maybe just not quite fully developed yet because of that reason. So there's some confidence or hope, I would say, maybe hope more than confidence that comes through with some players at the back end. But every draft story has different successes later on in the piece as well. So sometimes it's about program, it's about development, it's about the club you go to. You need a lot of things to go right. The success rate on picks obviously drops away from the top to the back, but also the best recruiting teams find the best use of these selections 30 onwards.
Cal mentioned as well they're a club that was in the mix for guys like Archer Reid and Logan Morris, and I think key forward, whether or not it's in this, and they might have made a trade, or have they done the pick?
I think there's a trade.
Trade's
We'll
been done.
just put it up on our... Because
Freo's
Freo's on the clock.
So Freo have moved in. So what is it? So it's 35 goes to Freo for 38 and a future third round selection. So Fremantle now on the clock, which is really fascinating. Maybe Richmond thinks their player can slip back. Maybe Fremantle thinks they've got someone in mind here they just simply can't say no to. We'll go back to Richmond in a second, but it is interesting.
I wonder if it's Sean Manor. Geelong, they obviously
got... a mature age.
Yeah, they've obviously got worries about what the Cats and the Pies were going to be looking at that point of the draft. So they clearly think that whoever they're interested in had some interest in those selections as well, and potentially from the Tigers too, so that could be one that they do look at as well. Mana's a mature ager who has had interest from Geelong and Fremantle as well. Is Cooper Simpson a possibility for them? He could be around that mark as well.
Okay, well, we'll see what Fremantle done. So just if you're tuning in to Draft Night Live on Night 2 on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, we've had Richmond, who are on the clock for quite a while, and they've just traded their pick with Fremantle, who clearly has a player in their sights that they wanted to nab at this point. Laura Kane is just up there about to announce who it is, so we wait with bated breath to see what Fremantle have done. Of course, this is their first selection, in fact, of the draft, and they have decided to take Cooper Simpson, who you just mentioned there, a midfielder?
Yeah, midfielder, got some pace as well. We'll see a little bit of burst here. He won the best and fairest last year for the Stingrays as a bottom major. Had an injury hit season, got a really bad corky in the championships and missed a number of weeks. Came back and showed a little bit of his flair towards the end of the season, was able to kick some goals, playing some half-forward time as well. Fremantle visited his place this week, actually, so made a bit of a late dash to see him, and obviously thought that there was a chance that he gets through to their pick. And he's a quality prospect. He's a professional. He'll do everything in his bit to get there. There's a little bit of a younger Dion Prestia for me. That's the type of player I think we might see with Dion Prestia. It's definitely the player we'll see with Dion Prestia.
Can I ask you, Geelong or Collingwood, would he have been in their sights? Would there have been a reason why, or potentially in Richmond sides, would there have been a reason why Fremantle would have made a concerted effort to get up to that pick?
Yeah, I think you make sure of it. A little bit like what we're talking about the Bombers earlier in the show about you don't know what someone else behind you is trying to do as well. If Cooper Simpson's still on the board, could another club be trying to get behind you that you think, oh, let's just make the most of it? So, look, he hadn't been linked as much to those two clubs in between, Simpson, with Collingwood and Geelong, but it does also mean that you have full possession of it.
All right, so Geelong on the clock. They've got 3.5 minutes. We know they've taken Connor O'Sullivan, a defender. That was last night. Mitch Edwards already tonight, an athletic ruckman as well. So now we wait and see what the Cats are going to do again with their third pick.
Yeah, and this is a chance to be Manor. It's a chance to be a few different options as well. Shellmaker, I don't think would be here, but he is still sort of in this range. I think soon we'll probably hear his name at some stage if the right club is the right fit for him. We know there's been interest there from Collingwood as well in Ari Shellmaker, so that could be next pick as well. Yeah, the Cats here, Joel Frazier is a player that they have looked at with a couple of their selections, so it could be the time where his name is called the Rebel Wingman.
They lost Isaac Smith, of course, to retirement, so potentially a replacement for him long term if that's the way they go. But yeah, it's been an interesting couple of nights. They've gone with two talls in Connor O'Sullivan and Mitch Edwards, as you mentioned. So whether or not they do try and switch up their focus here, maybe try to bring in some ground level speed, be an interesting pick to watch as they tick down 2.5 minutes to go.
Clay Hall is another midfielder who they could look at too.
And then looking ahead, we've got Collingwood, Richmond and Essendon with selections to come as we're nearing the end of round 2, and the pick is in for Geelong. So let's see what they have done here with that pick and who they've decided to go with. So we wait to see what that is. I think there's a little bit of a hold up at this point. But
and then the Pies up next, of course, as well. And that'll be their second selection too. So we're getting towards the deep part here. I mean, there probably is about 20 or so selections we expect, and one of those will be Cal Shadir, whether that's the Hawks' last pick or not.
Okay. And with pick number 36, Geelong has recruited Sean Manor, who we talked about, Werribee VFL side, best on ground in a losing grand final. Did he kick 6 goals or something ridiculous like that?
6 goals from 28 disposals. This is an amazing story. He's a 26-year-old, so he comes into the footy club as a ready-to-play option with their pick here, the Cats. And the Cats have never been afraid of picking mature age players, have they? And being in the moment. He's a player that they'd expect to be playing straight away. Clearly, Fremantle prioritised Simpson over Manor, and that's allowed the Cats to flick back and grab Manor. So, it's a really bold call, but I think it's a great call for VFL, the VFL program, the Werribee program, which has been so successful in recent seasons. Made the grand final, wasn't able to get the job done on that final day, but it's a great success story for Sean Manor and that persistence, really, to keep going with his AFL dream.
You love stories like this. A guy that's 26 years old, has been plugging away since missing his draft year, 8 years ago now, finally gets his opportunity, and on the back of a lot of really good footy in 2023. We know about his grand final performance, Cal, but this was someone that was getting mid-season draft interest as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, the Bulldogs nearly picked him mid-season, so they obviously went with Caleb Poulter instead of Sean Manor. In the end, Poulter's obviously been a pretty successful story as well in getting another opportunity at the level, but now the Cats have put their manners in.
And put your manners back in, Cal. It just shows, though, for draftees out there who don't get selected tonight and other hopefuls who are looking at a career as an elite footballer, there are lots of different ways to make it in. We've got the mid-season rookie draft as well now. We've got the pre-season signing period. There's lots of different opportunities. It doesn't have to just be the draft. You can go out there and work away at the VFL, waffle, sample, whatever you need to do.
Certainly can. The pick is in as well for Collingwood. So we'll see what they do at pick 37. It'll be an interesting pick. They picked Harry DiMattia on Monday night, the first night of the draft. So they brought in some speed through their midfield group. Of course, they don't have any glaring list needs. They've just won the premiership pretty convincingly as well. So
it's going to be hard to break into that
what
side.
They do.
With pick 37, they have selected Tau Giap, who is tied to Hawthorn's Next Generation Academy. But unfortunately, because it comes just inside that top 40, the Hawks cannot match the beat.
Well, unfortunately for you as a Hawthorn supporter, but fortunately for Collingwood, who managed to grab a really exciting talent. And it was at the back end of his season where we started to see it come to the fore, and a bit of a late bloomer or blossomer towards the end of the Coates Talent League season. I was at this game and he dominated, and he's dominated in the air. He's got some real stretch and ability to intercept, and he's got the rebound to his game too. He's very, very similar as a style of player to his brothers in Shanklin. There's a lot of similarities there. The bit on Tau is that he's actually a bit further progressed at the same age than his older brothers.
So you're saying he's going to be better than CJ?
No, I'm not saying that. I wouldn't dare cross CJ again.
Don't do that.
You've had your run-ins.
No. For the context there, he's every time I see CJ, he says, you didn't rate me, but you rate my brother. So, I do. And clearly Collingwood does as well. He'll be a good option for them. They like their rebound and their run, and he has both of those facets to his game.
All right, a great pick up there for Collingwood. That's 2 selections for them in the 2023 AFL draft. So the Tigers, they find themselves back on the clock. If you're just catching up with the news here on afl.com.au, they had a pick a little bit earlier, but they traded that off to Fremantle, who selected Cooper Simpson. So now, after shuffling back a couple of picks, the Tigers are once again on the clock. I wonder if they were just buying time, or clearly the player that they wanted, they were pretty confident that they might be able to get at this pick.
Yeah, and it could be Joel Frazier. We talked about their interest in Tau Giap as well, so I thought they were probably the threat to make the play for him before pick 40. In the end, it came by the Pies. Fawcett is an option potentially here, potentially later, even maybe a rookie. There's a chance he gets through that stage as well. George Stevens is still a midfielder that they've done their work on, as well as Lual. So they're all potential names in that mix. Ollie Murphy's still on the board too, as a key back from the Sandringham Dragons, and a player who did some great things for Vic Metro mid-season as their centre-half back. Yeah,
and their key defensive stocks, we spoke about their key forward stocks a little bit earlier, in the sense that Jack Riolt's recently retired. Tom Lynch is into his 30s now as well. They bring in Jacob Kaczynski during the trade period, but whether or not they want to continue strengthening in that area of the field. But their key defensive stocks, they've got a really good, solid young base, in the sense of Josh Gibcus. We know he didn't play footy in 2023 due to injuries, but has been a really good pick-up for them after being a top 10 pick a few years ago. And of course, Noel Bolter, who's one of the best young key defenders in the competition as well. So a solid grounding down back, and maybe work to do in the forward line. But yeah, as we mentioned before, they're a side that has found it difficult to get into the higher echelons of the draft in recent years, but have been able to find late diamonds in the rough.
And that's what we're all after, aren't we, on draft night? A diamond in the rough.
Well, yeah, that's right. And we're not in the rough yet, but we're in
still in the top 40 way to go.
We're about to hit sort of that last third of the national draft, and as I've been talking about, I think we'll probably see about 58 to 60 picks across the 2 nights. So clubs will still hold over some spots for pre-season spots, train-on spots, mid-season spots even next year.
So Adelaide's the only club who are completely done at this point, aren't they? I'm just going through. And just talking out loud because we're trying to pad for time.
No, the Tigers are likely to use 2 selections as well, and that's probably the plan. So They could also trade back again. If they still think their players there, do they try and trade back?
There's going to be a lot of Tiger fans watching at home thinking, please don't do that.
Just take someone, please. What about Port Adelaide fans who have to wait till about, pick 69 or something like that to get their first one?
Oh, they've traded again.
A trade again. Are you serious? Richmond, what is going on?
Clearly the man they
Do
think,
something.
Clearly the man they think is going to be their guy is going to be there. So a couple of spots back, they've done the deal now with West Coast, who've jumped
Pick 40,
up the board.
right.
It's pick 40 and a future third-round pick for pick 38. So
they've got two future thirds in.
They're locked and loaded for next year. Look out with those selections. Now the Eagles are back on the clock for what will be their third pick.
Yes.
So they've jumped up there a couple of positions. Clay Hall is still available for them potentially to have a look at. Zane Zakostelski they met with in recent days as well, a key defender from WA. They didn't get Dan Curtin, obviously, so do they go for the key position route with this selection?
They also haven't taken a WA prospect yet. Those two that you just mentioned, Clay Hall and Zane Zakostelski, both WA prospects. So, as we said, the pick is in there. They went really hard at WA prospects last year in the sense they brought Ruben Ginbey and Elijah Hewitt in with their first two selections. So it'll be interesting to see if they go local with this. What is their third pick of the draft at pick 38?
All right, so West Coast get this pick. They moved up a couple of places because Richmond just don't want their selection right now. They've traded it off twice, the first to Fremantle and then again to West Coast. So they're dealing with these WA clubs. So maybe there's a bit of a WA theme going on here. But let's see what the Eagles, who of course had the number one pick last night and took Harley Reid. And then this, of course, another pick for the Eagles. They also took Archer Reid tonight with their first pick of night 2. And the pick is in, and West Coast, continuing the local theme, Clay Hall from Peel Thunder.
Yeah, and he's been prolific throughout this season. He doesn't play a bad game very often. He's averaged 28 disposals for WA at the Carnival, was so consistent there as well. He also played some senior footy this season too and averaged nearly 20 disposals for Peel Thunder. So got some good experience there, and we'll be able to step in, I think, and play some footy for the Eagles as well pretty soon. So bigger body player, 189 centimetres as a midfielder, so a bit of a point of difference to his game, and he can find the footy at will. Yeah,
he's prolific, isn't he? And one that another WA midfielder they add into this football club, and they've been able to build a really strong local core of midfielders over the last couple of years. We know guys like Ruben Ginbey and Elijah Hewitt last year, and then obviously Tim Kelly, of course, Dom Sheed. So a really strong midfield the West Coast starting to build now.
And a father-son pick for the Eagles too, because his dad, Derek, played for the Eagles and the Cats. Wasn't eligible to be father-son for either club because only played
like 2 games or something?
100 game level. Yeah, 2 games for the Eagles and 74 games for the Cats. So that's a bit of a link there to the previous Derek Hall at the Eagles.
And look at that, as we take a look at West Coast picks now, but 2 Reids and a Hall. So they've done pretty well with what they've managed to draft so far. And as we spoke about last night, Riley, so important for them in their rebuild and getting this once powerhouse football club right back up the top where it belongs.
And they have to be pretty excited because in Harley Reid and now Clay Hall, Archer Reid might take a bit more time to develop, but they've got 2 guys at the very least that could come in and play senior football next year. And we saw Ruben Ginbey play a lot of senior football. Elijah Hewitt impressed in the back half of last year as well. So they've been able to bring in a few guys now that they'll be able to really start to mould into the footballers they want them to become.
Bombers are on the clock now. I think Bodie Ryan could be a chance here. That's a possibility.
Brother of?
No, cousin of Jacob Ryan at Collingwood. Who
looks like him, though.
He does look like him. He's got the longer blonde hair. He played on Harley Reid. He's a half-back, a bit of a stopper, so he could be a chance for this pick. They've also done their work on Luman Lawal. Do they get in just before the 40 cut-off for the NGAs? Joel Fraser's a wingman that they've also spent some time on more recently. They also were one of the clubs that were looking at Shaw Manor as well, but Bodie Ryan's a possibility if they look for half-back depth, of course, having already brought in Nate Caddy last night.
What a great pick for them. And that hair too, he's going to stand out on a footy field, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he plays with flair. He plays with flair, so
love that.
He's a big celebrator. I think he'll quickly become a fan favourite for Bombers.
Just quickly on the Le Mans Lawal debate and the fact that we're about to edge over to pick 40 now, and then he all of a sudden becomes eligible to join the Western Bulldogs if he does make it there. Do you expect the Western Bulldogs to match a bid for him if he does go beyond 40?
I think so. I think that would be the expectation, yeah. I think they'd like to add him if the price is right, and probably after pick 40 they've got those selections. They probably do make a couple more tonight and end up with 4, potentially 5. So I think that's probably the likely scenario there for Lual.
All right, so after Essendon, Richmond.
Well, hold on, don't tempt fate. They might not.
Will they actually take
Who's
their
got another
pick?
future third rounder?
Does
Do they have a
anyone want to
father
take
son
phone
coming through
calls?
next year or something? They're starting to build points for 2024.
Maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah, maybe. And then Fremantle, and then Brisbane, and then I think, does Richmond have another pick, and then GWS, and that could be the end of the second round of this year's draft. Obviously, as Cal said earlier tonight, we're expecting probably a total of around 55 to 60 selections all up after having 29 on night one of the draft. So we wait and see, and Essendon's pick is in. So we see what they have done and who they add to their list alongside Nate Caddy, who they took last night.
Here we go.
I'm pausing for dramatic effect, everybody.
I was going to say, I thought it was very dramatic then.
We do need some music or something, just a drum roll. I don't know, something to get the anticipation going here on our Draft Night Live show.
The Bombers are on.
Yes.
So this is a second pick, obviously, after taking Nate Caddy last night. Key forward. When was the last time they took a key forward in the first round?
Well, I think they're hoping that Cox could be that potentially. When they picked him a couple of years ago, Joe Danaher was obviously taken a long time ago in the first round. You probably got me covered there. I think Kyle Langford was a first round pick as well in 2014.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, was he a key forward then, though?
No, probably not. Probably not.
Oh, well, there you go. The Bombers, with pick 39, they've pounced on Lumal Lual. The Dogs are probably going to be devastated with this one. The South Sudanese prospect, what a story he is. And if you want to find out more, you can check out The Smoky, which is a 4-part series on play.afl. But Cal, he's a super talent.
Yeah, he's a super talent and can play off half-back, a rebounder, a stopper as well, so he can do that too. Did some really nice things for Vic Country at the mid-year championships and also with the Greater Western Victoria Rebels throughout their Coach Talent League season. A quality character as well. I think clubs fell in love with him and his interviews throughout this year. And yeah, he's a player that will take some time. He's still smaller type at this point, but I think the Bombers have been looking at that half-back region. That's why they did have the interest in Bodie Ryan and also Lual as well.
Yeah, and I like they've been able to strengthen their back line over the last couple of months. They brought in Ben Mackay, obviously, as a free agent on that incredibly long-term deal. They bring him into the football club from North Melbourne, and then obviously with Lual Lual here, they bring in another defender, different type of defender in the sense that he's more of a rebound lockdown defender as opposed to being that key position type. But I like the fact that they've been able to bring in 2 players that can really strengthen this side long-term in the back line.
And I'm sure it's a wonderful moment for the Lual family, but obviously bittersweet too, Cal, because he lost his mum when he was just 14 years of age when she unfortunately had a stroke. It was a really tragic story, but Regina, I'm sure, is looking down on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he speaks about his mum with great affection, as his whole family does, and his dad as well, about the role that his dad has played, Thomas, in his life and his family since then. So I think, you're right. They'll be thinking about their mum tonight.
Yeah, hard not to. All right, Richmond is on the clock. 3 minutes and 12 seconds to decide if they're going to trade this pick again. What are the Tigers going to do? Bets.
They have to pick now, surely.
I reckon they pick.
I'm just going to say trade just for something different. While we wait, should we just have a chocolate snack? Because
I
nothing else
had that one last night. Too crunchy. Some names that will pop up around this part. Very nice. Harvey Johnston's a name we haven't spoken about yet, who could be around this part of the draft. Joel Frazier, who we have spoken about, could be available as well. Archie Roberts is still available. Luke Lloyd, potentially in this back section of the draft, has some interest from different clubs. Ollie Murphy as a key back is still available as well. Ari Schoenmaker, Vigo Vicentini as a ruckman, Lockie Smith as a ruckman from Gippsland. So a few of those guys are going to be in the mix. Cohen Sanchez is a name as well from WA midfielder who can kick some goals. So there's some different guys who are still there, and it's just up to what takes the Tigers' fancy now. And they have been able to prepare. I know, Rolly, you spoke to Matt Clark earlier this week around how you prepare for knowing that you're not going to have a pick in the early part of the draft at least. So it's not as if they weren't well aware of what was coming, and That's why maybe they've been so confident to push back a few spots because they know the options pretty well.
Well, what do you do if you're Port Adelaide? Because, I mean, I know I've been banging on about this, but they've got to pick, like, really, really late in this year's draft. As a recruiting team, what are you doing? What's your strategy at that point?
You prepare the same way. I think everyone we've spoken to with later picks over the last couple of weeks, they prepare the same way. They do as much work on Harley Reid as they do on whoever they're going to take at pick 73. So I think clubs just go through and they have their order and they stick to it throughout the night, and they hope that someone high in their order floats through to them at this pick. And obviously Richmond in this instance, given the fact that they started with I think it was 35, they traded to 38 and they traded to 40, they must be reasonably confident that the player they had earlier on their board might have been a unique choice that other clubs in that mix didn't really have, and that's what's given them the confidence to trade back a little bit. Or potentially they had multiple names at this area of the draft. Where
so confidence where they can go, we're happy with all of them. They're pretty even. We've got one of the 5. If we skip back 2 spots, then 3 spots, 3 spots, then 2 spots, then you're pretty confident that one of them's going to be available.
All right, we are going to have
time is ticking away, which makes me a bit nervous for
It
Richmond.
does. I reckon they're training this week again. I do want to let you all know, though, we are going to be crossing back into Marvel Stadium in and around tonight. We already had one interview with Hamish Ogilvie, Adelaide's National Recruiting Manager, but we will get out and speak to some more recruiters and list managers throughout the night. So Sarah Ollie is standing by. We haven't forgotten her, so she will be part of our draft coverage. Of course, one of our favourites here at afl.com.au, and hopefully we'll be able to speak to someone from Collingwood very shortly. But guys,
they've picked.
Breaking news. Richmond has made a selection.
They've made a decision
here.
here.
In after trading it twice and shuffling back quite a few spots. They've finally made a call as we wait to see what they have done here. Confirmation.
Oh, it must be coming soon.
Okay, and here we go with pick 40.
Oh.
The Richmond Football Club has selected Kane McAuliffe, who is from South Australia, Cal.
That's right, another South Australian taken, and he joins the Tigers. A big-bodied and powerful midfielder. He wins his own footy, but penetrating kick as well. Come back from some injury issues over at the start of the season, but has been a dominant player at different levels for North Adelaide and also for South Australia too at the Carnival. So has some real speed to his game, 2.93 seconds in the 20-metre sprint, so that ranked him in the top 5 at the Combine. Running vertical jump, he's right up there amongst the best as well. So he's one of those players that we think can definitely step in and play some footy, given his power and ability to get around different opponents through the midfield.
And they've been a club that's needed midfield depth, I think. Obviously, they brought in Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper over the last couple of years via trade, but they need to replenish their young midfield stocks and hopefully build one out naturally over the next couple of years. They've been a club that have taken midfielders with earlier picks. Thompson Dow's the one that just got a contract extension for next year as well, and they've got some high hopes, given he played a couple of nice games towards the back end of the season. Jack Ross has been able to go through there on occasions as well, but they certainly needed to build out that midfield depth. And it's interesting how or where they viewed Kane McAuliffe, given the fact they traded back a couple of times. Did they think that he just wasn't in their range or the clubs around their range earlier in the draft? Or did they think maybe, as you mentioned, they had a whole bunch of names, they thought they'd get a really good one that slipped through to them? But obviously Kane McAuliffe now heads to Tigerland.
So Fremantle on the clock now. They've already taken one selection tonight. That was Cooper Simpson, who's a pacey midfielder. Where do they look to now, Cal? And is it best available still that's left around, or are we going very targeted with a needs-based player?
A club that could make the bid here is for Harvey Thomas. They're the club that could make a bid for Harvey Thomas. When I look at the options for him, he's a member of the Giants Academy. I think the Giants had matched that pretty comfortably and be happy to at this point of the draft. They've shown probably the most interest in him, so that's a possibility. There's still some tools still on the board. They looked at some tools earlier in the draft as well, if they were still there, that Archer Reid or Logan Morris, if they were on the board, would they have grabbed them? So maybe they look at that region as well.
Okay, well, the pick is in for Fremantle.
Haven't wasted much time with this one.
No, they haven't, unlike Richmond, so we'll see. Poor Richmond, just plodding on. Look, I've got nothing else to talk about, all right? So we're going to talk about Richmond. Last night it was Bidney.
Freo will also signed Jeremy Sharp as a pre-season pick 2 from Gold Coast.
So with pick number 41, Fremantle has selected Ollie Murphy, who is a tall key defender, I believe. And he was pretty good in the Combine, wasn't he? Didn't he run a fast 2K?
He did. No, he's got that athleticism on that front, no doubt about it. Under 6 minutes and 30 seconds for his 2-kilometre time trial, so that put him right amongst the top realms of the runners. He's an intercepting key back. his best form for the year came for Vic Metro in the middle of the season. So that's where he was able to show his quality in the air. You know, I think the Dockers clearly have identified that key position market as something they wanted to build through the draft in this position.
He was Vic Metro's MVP throughout the National Championships, which goes to show just how much he impressed throughout that National Championships campaign. They've been a side that's been looking for key position depth in the back line over the last couple of months. They lost Joel Hamling as a free agent going to Sydney. They bring in Oscar McDonald, who'd played in the VFL for Williamstown throughout the year, and just to beef up their key position depth in the back line. But obviously, Alex Pearce, we know about, Brennan Cox and Luke Ryan down there. So they've got some really solid key defenders down there, but they've been looking to bolster their depth there. And Ollie Murphy now, someone that they'll be able to put years into. The fact that they've brought in a mature age player in Oscar McDonald over the last couple of months means that they can afford to take their time with Ollie Murphy, get his body up to the speed of AFL level before he plays senior football.
So Brisbane Lions are now on the clock with pick 42. Earlier tonight they selected Logan Morris, who is a tall, strong marking forward, which we thought that they needed to bolster those talls in their list. What do they do now?
Well, yeah, do they go tall again? They've actually shown some interest in Sam Van Rooyen, the younger brother of Jacob. Interesting if that's for this pick or a little bit later, even a rookie selection.
Similar player to Jacob?
Similar in the sense they're both tall forwards. Okay. Playing different styles. I think probably Jacob was more of a bash and crash and Sam's probably more the lead-up type of player. So different types, but having already taken Logan Morris, whether that changes the strategy there or sees them flick around things. Aidan O'Driscoll's another player that has been linked there a little bit as well. He's the younger brother of Nathan and Emma at Fremantle. So he's obviously aiming to be the third sibling in the AFL as well. Fremantle too could have a look at him if they take one of these later picks too. So we'll wait and see if they get all three.
Imagine that,
and the
all three at the same club. And then we had the Dersmers. I mean, there's something going on in some of these households. Maybe the competitive backyard football growing up would have been a little bit insane in some of those households. All right, so the Brisbane Lions, and this was, tonight was the first time they'd selected, so they didn't have a selection last night, so they pretty cool, calm and collected. They did a couple of trades in the back end
they did.
last night.
They did a couple of trades. They bring Tom Duday as a free agent. Of course, Brendan Ryan from Hawthorn, who came as part of that deal where Jack Gunston went back to the Hawks. But as we mentioned before, they've also got the ability to be one of those clubs where they can be really targeted with their picks, knowing that they're going to get Levi Ashcroft, father, son, younger brother of Will, into the football club next year. Could be a real chance of being a real top pick in the 2024 draft. They got Will in last year, paid for him with points later in the draft, but it wasn't necessarily a pick that they had to necessarily earn higher in the draft order. So the fact that they bring in those two players as almost free hits means that they can be more targeted with their selections here.
And when you look at Brisbane, I mean, losing a grand final it was so close to beating the Pies on grand final day. It was an incredible game if we go back to September. But I mean, they're going to be right up around the mark again, aren't they, in 2024, that's for sure. And
it's all been draft driven, hasn't it? And some great additions on top of that as well. They've been the best importers, I think, in the AFL and getting recruits across to their club. So their draft build at the start and then being able to bring in some quality A-grade recruits too.
Okay, so the pick is in. We look to see what the Brisbane Lions have done with their second pick in this year's draft. Of course, Logan Morris was who they took earlier, a tall forward. And I believe we're about to find out with pick 42, Luke Lloyd. So another tall forward.
Yeah, he is, 193 centimetre tall forward. And Riley, he knows how to kick a goal.
He does. He kicked 19 in school footy this year for D-La. An incredible game. He broke the D-La school record last year when he kicked 14 goals, played against the same opposition this year and kicked 19 goals against them. Kicked 19 goals 5 as well, and he was flat.
Hold on, 19 goals in a game, not a season?
In a game. He was flat on himself because he kicked 5 behinds late in the last quarter, didn't get to 20. All of his teammates were egging him on. He couldn't get there. But someone who played some really good footy and got in this Sandringham side late in the year as well, didn't he, Cal? And really helped them spearhead them towards a premiership.
He kicked 21 goals in 11 games for the Dragons, and as you say, he's got some craft. He's got some movement around goal. He just knows how to find them. He's good above his head. He's quite versatile when he's at ground level too. He's not afraid of going for his grab, but also pretty adept at stepping through and past players. So he's got some genuine forward smarts, and the things you can't teach, you see that he's got around goal, and you don't kick 19 by accident. That opposition would be happy he's leaving school.
It certainly would be. I want to ask, is he different to Logan Morris? What are the differences in their games?
question.
Because they've taken two tall marking forwards with their first two picks tonight.
I don't think he's as much of a contested marker as Logan Morris. So he might be your move around the ground type of roaming forward, whereas Morris can mark above his height probably better, I would say. So there is difference, but I mean, taking both of them shows that the Lions clearly looked at that part of the ground and said we need some more backup and growth within our list on that part.
I'm sorry, I can't get over the fact that he kicked 19 goals in a game. Like, that is just insanity.
It was the same opponent as well.
And then the 14.
14 last year.
So the exact same guy that played on him, though?
I don't know.
I hope not.
Imagine
that
that.
much detail,
but you can't. That just blows my mind.
And a good result for the Western Jets as well.
Yes.
Coming up too, because I think we'll see some more players for them that get selected over the next few picks. Logan Morris, Western Jet, and then they bring in obviously we see this selection here too in Luke Lloyd. So to get the Western Jets boy in Logan Morris, Western Jets have battled at times to get their players picked in recent years. It's gone that zone. So I think a really successful night for them to get him on the board and off to the Lions.
Okay, so just a couple of picks ago, the Richmond Football Club finally made a selection, and that was after they traded back their pick a couple of times. It was like they didn't want to do anything. But they managed to select Kane McAuliffe, who is a South Australian midfielder, with that selection, and now they find themselves on the clock again with pick 43, and I believe there's only 2 more picks to go in this second round. So GWS is where the second round will finish, so we'll have a little bit of a pause and we can reflect in a moment. But the Tigers, what do they do this time? That's the big question. Do they trade it again?
Who knows? Who knows? Look, the names we've been talking about, there's a couple of them still there. Do they grab Liam Fawcett here? He's a key forward who's been on the radar potentially too. He might still get through to be a rookie selection as well. So they'll also upgrade Ben Miller to their senior list as well. So expect them to use 2 selections. So if they hold here, this might well be their last pick off the night.
All right, we'll wait and see. And then you've got the Giants, of course. Phoenix Gothard and James Leake were the 2 players that they took last night. So much drama around the Giants last night because they held pick number 8 in the draft and ended up trading that out. The 2 players that were sort of on their draft board were Leake and Gothard. They ended up taking Phoenix Gothard first and Leake a little bit later. And then, of course, Adelaide came in, took their pick and swooped and made the curtain call, which was it was really exciting, actually, being here and there, wasn't it? Like, we didn't know what was happening. Well, you two did because you're on the phone texting the whole time, which is why this is a place to be for all your breaking news on draft night. But, yeah, it was really exciting, the addition of live trading in the last few years and ramping it up this year in particular.
Yeah, and I think clubs have gotten so much better at it as well. I mean, everything's a work in progress, isn't it? The first time was 2018. That was new. We've seen more and more of these trades happen and clubs be so good at it and move up for their players.
They've picked again, the Tigers, at least.
They have. They have picked again. So we wait and see what they do here. The Richmond Football Club, as I mentioned before, they took Kane McAuliffe from South Australia, a midfielder this time around.
The pick is in.
And the pick is in. Tigers fans, don't hold
waiting
breath.
with bated breath.
No, don't worry, they haven't traded it. It is definitely in. And Liam Fawcett has been selected with pick 43 for the Richmond Football Club. And I believe, Cal, another South Australian.
He is, and he's a key forward, and he's powerful, he's athletic. Some of his games at the start of this season were so exciting, Riley, and that's probably what put him on the map. He maybe didn't have that same form for South Australia at the championships through that carnival, but strong marking player, tall forward who has been on their radar, as we've spoken about. Hits 3 seconds over 20 metres, so got some real burst on the lead. Pretty strong in the endurance stakes as well, but yeah, kicks a lot of goals and was able to do that this year for Central District.
I reckon when they were on the clock at pick 35, we spoke about their potential to get a key forward in this year's draft class. They've got one here in Liam Fawcett, in the sense that Jack Rewalt's just retired recently. They brought in Jacob Kazitsky, but he hasn't been someone that's necessarily been able to be a consistent performer at the Hawks over the last couple of years. Tom Lynch is 32 years old next year as well. So they need to they need to fill out their key position stocks in the forward line. That's no question about that. So they've managed to do it here with Liam Fawcett, and they'll hope they can develop him over the next couple of years. 2
selections then, and then obviously with Ben Miller to be upgraded. Do you think this might be them done, or maybe one one more?
I think most likely them done.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's most likely their night done, all the action in the second round.
All right, so GWS, if we take a look again at what they did last night, Gothard and Leake, so a small forward and then an attacking half back.
Although speaking to a few people last night, I think they identified Leake as being a potential midfielder and starting his career in the midfield for them at the club. So he's, 187 centimetres is he, I think? So he's been able to play everywhere across the course of the field. But I think they've identified him as potentially starting his career in the midfield and see if he can build out from there.
There's a bit of Jimmy Bartell about him. He can play a bit of everywhere. Doesn't wear the long sleeves as much, but a bit of Jimmy there. Look, the Giants here, do they take Harvey Thomas? Is Joe Fonte another option for them?
Okay.
This is ones we've been raised about as well. They probably would prefer not to take Harvey Thomas with their own pick and just match it later. They're only going to take 3 selections, so that might change though with the availability of different players.
Okay, and this is the last pick of the second round. We'll take a small break and then come back with the third and fourth and fifth, and who knows how many other rounds we're going to have here tonight. We're in it for the long haul. We've got chocolate snacks and some Skittles, some of which tasted a little bit weird, but the pick is in for the Giants, and with pick 44, they've taken Joseph Fonte, a defender, Cal.
Yeah, they've gone for pace, and he has it. He has that speed in his game, 2.88 seconds over the 20-metre sprint and 7.97 seconds in the agility test, which was first and second ranked respectively at the state combine. So from Western Australia, plays also at Claremont. So we've seen some of that run and dash in his game. He can go overhead as well. We saw a little bit of a highlight there. But his form at under-18s level this season was really, really strong, and the Giants had been linked to him a fair bit at this pick.
Maybe this is their defender they wanted to get all along. So I really like their defensive stocks and the way, clearly they've got a really good batch of key position defenders, but the way they were able to move guys back to half-back, Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash last year, Isaac Cumming played a little bit of half-back throughout the finals and late in the season as well. So they've got a lot of players who have gone through there over the last couple of years, and a lot of players that can develop, and Joe Fonte, another one they can bring into the football club where they can give him time to develop given their quality and depth in that area.
They like the tsunami though, don't they? And he can be a member of that. They give that ping off half-back, and look, they didn't get the runner in Caleb Windsor at the top end of the draft, which I think probably would have seen them keep that pick before they traded it. So they get some real pizzazz off half-back in Fonte, and it's a great name, Joe Fonte.
It is a great name indeed. We've got some great names in this year's draft.
Well, I've taken Phoenix Gothard as well. That's a good one.
Yeah,
I
Gothard
like
City.
it. Yeah. I like that. You're watching AFL Draft Night Live. It's great to have your company here on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app. If you're just tuning in, welcome. The second round of the draft has just been completed. So let's recap what has happened so far in the first hour or so of night 2. Archer Reed, well, he went to the West Coast Eagles because they had the first pick on night 2 as well, after having Harley Reid selected as pick number 1 last night. Logan Morris, a key forward for the Lions, actually snagged another key forward later on in the second draft with Luke Lloyd. And then Mitch Edwards, a ruck, being picked up, Cal, by Geelong.
Yeah, that's right. He was one of 3 players from Next Generation Academies to be picked up in the 30s, alongside Tao Giath at the Pies and Lamar Lawal at the Bombers as well. The Tigers did some trading. They moved back from 35 to 38 and then to pick 40. 2 different trades there, picked up some future picks, but ended up with Kane McAuliffe and Liam Fawcett, 2 South Australian boys, a midfielder and a key forward. And Ollie Murphy as well was on the board a little bit deeper than what we probably thought he'd be, but the key back goes to Fremantle as one of a couple of selections for the Dockers too, with Cooper Simpson a little bit early. And Sean Manor, well, what a story, Riley, that is. A 26-year-old out of the VFL goes to the Cats, and they'll be hoping to see him make an impact straight away.
There certainly will be. Some really interesting picks there. And as you mentioned, the guys that just didn't make it through to their Next Generation Academy clubs, in Tao Giath, who went to Collingwood at pick 37, and then Lamar Lawal, who went to Essendon at pick 39. Mitch Edwards as well in the 30s that didn't quite get to Fremantle. He went to Geelong. So there was a lot of intrigue over the last 24 hours around where those guys would be taken and whether or not they might slip beyond pick 40 and get to the clubs where they were tied to through Next Generation Academies. Found it fascinating they were all taken before pick 40.
Well, the club that pounced on Tao Giath was Collingwood, and their national recruiting manager in Derek Hine is with Sarah Ollie over at Marvel. Hello, Sarah.
Hello to you, Nat and Co. And hello to you, Derek. Yesterday, Harry DiMartia, and today, Tao Giath. Let's start with Harry. What kind of player and person are Pies fans getting? Because he's just as impressive on the field as he is off the field, isn't he?
He certainly is. I was talking to the boys over there before. He reminds me very much of Scott Pendlebury when he came in. I'm not saying he's Scott Pendlebury the player, but in terms of those leadership traits and not dissimilar to Scotty coming in from a really elite program and stepping into another elite program, which gives us so much confidence in terms of his assimilation into elite sport.
It was a common theme among recruiters that he interviewed really, really well. Was there one thing in particular that stood out?
No, well, obviously his game was pretty handy, but again, it's just the way that he interacts at all levels of management, whether it be the psychologist, the coach, the recruiters. And we had him in at the club today, and he seriously had about half the coaches eating out of his hand, and just the way that he presented it, he wasn't backward in terms of how he foreseed him fitting into our system and so on. So, look, he's certainly aware of all the works in front of him, but again, getting back to Scott when he came into the system, he reminds me so much of him. And again, I'm not saying he's Scott Pendlebury, but he has very similar of those off-field traits.
So not Scott Pendlebury, but does he bring leadership traits? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with it more than anything, that he's very sure of himself, he's very confident in himself. I suppose he's humbly confident in what he can do and what he can bring, and clearly, being at that elite level in a cricket program has really supported him in that.
Well, he sounds like an absolute ripper, as does Tao Giath. Of course, the Giath name, we do know it in AFL circles, the younger brother of Chankuoth is at Hawthorn, but he's a player with a lot of upside, isn't he?
Oh, he's very similar to his brother, at the same age, maybe a little bit more advanced. But, he joins another group of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that we've got at the group at the club, and he's going to take him a little bit of time because physically he needs to develop. He's not physically as developed as Harry, but he'll join the likes of Jacob Ryan and Reef McInnes and these sorts of guys, Finn McRae, that are sort of providing that, I suppose, that next layer of players that are going to be able to come in and play for us. So again, he's a little bit behind them in terms of his development, his physical development, but talking to him before, he's so excited, his family excited, and we're really embracing of both boys' families, and it's a special time for them because they'll get to work tomorrow, and we're really excited to have them.
Nat, Cal and Riley, over to you.
Decca, where do you see Harry playing? What's the positional role? Because other clubs, view him potentially as a half-back. He can play through the midfield. We saw him even a little bit forward as well. That turn of speed gives him some versatility for you. What's your idea for him?
Yeah, I reckon his starting point's as a high-back, and then in time he'll slip through the midfield. He's even got a little bit of wing in him as well, I suppose. But I suppose a not dissimilar progression to Nick Dacos, that's where he'll start, and then he's got that physical side, he's got that short speed that'll be able to go and break to space, and as you've seen, he's got that depth in his kick, and that's probably where we'd start. So to answer your question, we see his primary position as high back and his secondary position is midfield.
And what about Tao? When did you start to recognise him as a talent who you could potentially look at on your board, because it felt like a late rise for him?
Yeah, it was. I think I was down at a game, might have been the Gippsland Northern Knights game in the second half of the year, where I thought he really started to get a nice level of consistency into his game, and the final out at Latrobe as well. I think that sort of led us to have that little bit of confidence in where he's going to be able to come in and play for us.
Derek, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and best of luck with the rest of the night.
No worries, guys. Thanks very much.
Derek Hine there, Collingwood's National Recruiting Manager. Now, in the meantime, the third round of this year's draft has started. The Western Bulldogs with pick 45, and they have selected Joel Fraser. Tell me a little bit about Joel from the GWB Rebels, Cal.
Well, this guy has had some massive games, and that includes a 6-goal game from 26 disposals earlier in the year. This is one of them against the Dandenong Stingrays. He was on fire that day, and he just his ability to get up and down the ground. He's got elite athleticism and running capacity, and this day was on the end of it as well. And at his size at 190 centimetres, he's a pretty strong all-round player. He can go overhead, which he did there on that occasion for Vic Country, where he was a pretty consistent player throughout their carnival. So he now adds to the Dogs' Knights. Of course, they've got Riley Sanders already. Jordan Croft has come through as a father-son pick. And then we see Joel Frazier there too. So they probably have one more pick after that as well. I think that's probably most likely. But yeah, he'll be up and down that Marvel wing, I reckon.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. They brought in Caleb Poulter, as we know. You've mentioned that before in the mid-season draft, midway through last season. He played some senior footy for them in the back half of the year, earned a contract extension as well. So they were really pleased with what he was able to produce. But Joel Frazier, another one who adds to that wing depth. James Harms comes into the midfield group as well, having arrived in a trade from Melbourne over the off-season as well. So clearly with Sanders, with Frazier, with Harms, they've been able to build out that midfield group over the last couple of months.
So for Hawthorn, it's been a little bit of a wait between picks because last time the Wizard joined Waverley in Nick Watson. That was very early on, and now they sit and wait and pick 46. They're on the clock. What do they need, Riley?
Well,
or Cal?
Just on this one, sorry. It could be Cal Shadir if they're only choosing 3 picks.
Okay, yes.
If they're only wanting to have 3 picks, then it could just be the father-son in Cal Shadir. They've committed to taking him with a national draft selection if they match the bid.
Yep.
Or if this is going to be their last selection, then they'd take it here. Otherwise, they can also decide to take a 4th and try and get him through to a bit later on the board, because there might still be a player who they're happy with and who's available.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see. We know they were already brought in Will McCabe as well, a father-son.
Yes,
last night they matched a bid from North Melbourne, I think it was, for Will McCabe in the top 20 there.
How could I forget Will? Just left him off my notes.
So they've done well already to bring in a forward, a mercurial forward in Nick Watson, a key defender in Will McCabe, 2 guys that will develop at their own rates, obviously. But they're a side that are still in the early phases of their development as a list under coach Sam Mitchell. So I don't think in terms of positional needs there's anywhere that's really in ultra need of strengthening. I think the midfield group has been really good, and they've been able to build a really strong core of midfielders using some players they might not have expected to come on at the rate they have. Guys like Connor Nash, who's gone into that midfield group and been really good. Will Day's gone in there, having started his career in a variety of different roles. So
Newcomb's come from the mid-season draft.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been an unconventional list build through the midfield, but they've managed to build a really strong young core there. So the fact they've got that core and they've supplemented over the last couple of days with a forward in Nick Watson, a defender in Will McCabe, I think they're pretty well set up, regardless of whether or not it's the father-son in Cal Shadir here, or whether or not they take another pick and bank on getting him a bit later.
Well, I still think they need a key forward, but they obviously don't grow on trees.
No, they're hard to find, aren't they? I mean, there's been a few taken tonight, though, and already last night too. We've seen a couple with Logan Morris and Luke Lloyd taken, Liam Fawcett too. Going to be interesting. But Cal Shadir himself is a ruck forward himself, and I think that the back end of his season for the Sandringham Dragons showed him to be a pretty exciting talent.
All right, we wait and see. The pick is in at the moment, so we wait and see who they announce. The Hawks, of course, looking to slowly rise up the ladder, but I do think it'll be another sort of bottom 6 year for the Hawks at this stage, but plenty of optimism.
They knocked off some pretty good sides.
Well, they beat Collingwood and Brisbane, the 2 grand finalists.
Brisbane so they've played some good footy over the last couple of years, and it gives you optimism that they can build on that in the coming seasons, and players like Nick Watson and Will McCabe will certainly help them do that.
All right. Hawthorn with pick 46 have selected Bodie Ryan, a defender from South Australia, Cal Glenelg in the sample, and you mentioned him earlier, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was probably in the mix for the Bombers pick. The Hawks get him now. He's a defender who can be locked down. He can shut down some pretty good players. He did that in a game against Harley Reid, actually, after Harley had kicked 3 goals in the opening 10 minutes for Vic Country. Managed to go to him and shut him down in this one here at Icon Park. Was able to do that there. He can take his marks as well. He's the cousin of Jacob Ryan, who was picked by the Pies last year in the second round. So he did taken in the second round tonight. He's a pretty versatile player. I like him as a player, and he's a good mix. So now we'd see and expect Cal Shadir to be their next selection and their last selection. Already Watson, McCabe, and now Ryan. So a bit of a different haul for them, and a mix. And that's still what they need. I mean, their list isn't at the point where you're picking too much for needs.
Yeah.
I think it's a couple of years into this development process, but I've liked the spread of talent they've got tonight.
Dogs haven't taken long. They're
No,
already
bang. They knew exactly what they wanted. We like this at this time of the night. Quick decision making, just to keep things punchy, of course, for our coverage. And for those of you sitting at home watching along, I do hope you're enjoying tonight's draft coverage after what was a big night last night. And with the pick 47, the Western Bulldogs have selected Lachlan Smith. Another ruckman gone in this draft.
Yeah, and they've clearly been looking for another ruck to add to their group. I mean, they lost Jordan Sweet during the trade period, Riley, so we're probably looking in a way, how do you find the next guy on the list? Tim English, of course, arguably the best ruckman in the game at the moment, so a pretty good one to learn off. Lachie Smith I like. He's a tough, he's aggressive, he gets to contest. He's just a bit of old-fashioned ruckman, and he's actually probably a little bit more better prepared to play at the next level than maybe some of the other rucks who were taken earlier than him. He just gets around the ground and he's at a contest to contest, and I think there was a fair bit of interest in him in the second half of the draft. North Melbourne, Richmond had also been linked to him, so he gets his opportunity at the Bulldogs.
It was interesting. I wondered if they would target a ruck over these couple of nights, simply because of the fact that, as you mentioned, Cal, Jordan Sweet leaves for Port Adelaide, but they don't have much depth beyond Tim English. We know Rory Lobb can play as a ruckman, but it hasn't necessarily been his favoured role at AFL level, be that at GWS, Fremantle or the Western Bulldogs. He's been more of that key forward. So even though Tim English was the reigning All-Australian ruck and arguably the best ruckman in the competition at the moment, they didn't have much if he goes down. And ruckmen generally take a long time to develop, so you wouldn't necessarily say that Lachie Smith is going to go in there and have an immediate impact for them next year, but he's someone they certainly needed in terms of their list growth over the next couple of seasons.
It can be hard for clubs too, because you spend all this time and energy developing a young ruckman, and then swoop, someone else comes along in the trade period and picks them up,
Sweet's
right?
a perfect example.
Exactly. Yeah. So it can be unlucky, but look, we hope the Western Bulldogs have one here in Lachlan Smith.
And I think the Roos would have had a look at him at this pick as well if they didn't take Taylor Goad earlier in the draft last night. So they've obviously got their ruckman there.
Yep.
Now, it'd be interesting if they use this pick. They were weighing up whether 5 or 6 picks would be their go for the night. So there's a chance that we're starting to hit almost past territory, particularly given they've already got their 5.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at their 5 now. And what a 5 it was, a fine-looking 5. In fact, it all started with Colby McKercher at pick number 2. Gosh, I've got to remember. And then, of course, Jed Walter was at 3. They did that bid.
Yeah.
And then the Suns matched that. Then they got Dersma, Goad, as you mentioned, Will Dawson, and Riley Hardiman to a half-back. So they've got a really, really nice mix there. Maybe they just stop and call it at that?
Possibly. But also, I think clubs, we're seeing them lock in some picks pretty quickly. So clearly particularly the last couple, Ryan and Smith, so clearly these clubs are eyeing off players that they probably viewed would be around that mark and available. So there's still enough on the board. There's different names who are there. Archie Roberts, Jack Delene's a small forward. Do they have a look at the small forward ranks as well?
That's the only one that's missing, really, off that list.
Yeah, they've hit every other mark. Harvey Johnston is a runner as well. Ari Scholmoker is a player who probably still is a chance over the next 5 to 10 picks.
Are you surprised he's still on the board?
To some degree, yeah. They did get a lot of interest in interviews leading up to the draft, so to some degree, yep. Cohen Sanchez is another player who is still maybe around that part as well, so we wait and see.
Well, they have
traded it.
Hello.
Here we go, Port Adelaide.
Port Adelaide have entered the group chat, the WhatsApp group chat, and they want to play.
So 48 for a future 4th round selection, which probably gives you the indication that North probably are done for the night now, in the sense that they're trading away these picks for future round 4s. So Port Adelaide onto the clock for the first time tonight.
So they must have someone in mind here, the Power. And who do you think it would be, Cal?
I think it could be Harvey Johnston. There's a chance for him, maybe. Will Lorenz is another possibility for the Power. Lachie Charlson, they've done work on. He's a small forward who kicked a big bag of 8 goals late in the season for the Rebels, so he's one who could be there. Liam Walters is midfielder from the Oakley Chargers, who has potential too. Lachie Rowlandson from South Australia is a small forward who could also have some appeal. So there's some of the names that might be weighed up here. Clearly they've thought, nope, we've had enough of waiting. Let's move up and get into this.
We're sick of Nat mentioning the fact that Power fans have to wait so long. So Port Adelaide have entered the draft. They're here. They're ready to make a selection. They've got 32 seconds left on the clock to do so, but that was with a trade with North Melbourne. So we probably think after 5 selections last night on night 1 of the 2023 AFL draft that North Melbourne is done and dusted, but we will wait to hear official word of that. And we wait to see what Port Adelaide have done here.
It's going to be fascinating. They were clearly the busiest side of any over the off-season in terms of the trade period and the work they did there. Ivan Solder and Jordan Sweet as ruck options, Asava Radigalia as a key defensive option, Brendan Zerk-Thatcher as a key defensive option. So they really targeted needs in that trade period. 2 key defenders, 2 rucks. They thought that was their downfall in 2023. Had a really strong start to the year. Their year sort of petered out a little bit towards the end and they struggled throughout that finals campaign. But one of the best midfield crops in the competition and young midfield crops in the competition, Zach Butters, Connor Rosie, Jason Horn-Francis, who they add through there now. Dan Houston's gone through the midfield in the last couple of years as well. So it'll be interesting to see who they take, but seriously, they clearly had someone in mind moving up to this pick 48 now.
Okay, all right. Let's wait and see what Port Adelaide are doing with their first pick in this year's draft. Port fans have waited a long time for this. I hope you're still watching and tuning into afl.com.au.
They might have had their alarm set for a bit later in the night.
they might miss it. Oh no, we'll have to play back this moment at some point. Alrighty, with pick number 48, Port Adelaide has selected Thomas Anastasopoulos with this selection. Tell us about him, Cal.
He's a small forward, and he actually has reminded me through this year of Orazio Fantasia. So they lose Orazio Fantasia, they bring in Anastasopoulos, and look, he's a player who burst to prominence early in the season in the Coates Talent League, had a 5-goal game early in the year for the Falcons, and that's when his speed and running capacity, and it's not just about the pace that he brings, he gets up and down on the ground. So I think clubs like that in the modern game to be able to, as half forwards, you have to work so hard and get up and back. So he's got that capacity to do it, and he's kicked goals. He ran the 2-kilometre time trial in 6 minutes and 11 seconds at the Combine. So he's clearly got the endurance base to be up and back as a small forward.
I've been sweating on that all night. Just can I say that Port Adelaide have tried to stitch me up because I've been freaking out about pronouncing that name incorrectly. So Tom, if you are listening or any family members and I've pronounced that wrong, I do apologise.
I think you did pretty well, Anastasopoulos.
I really like their small forward crop that they've been able to bring in over the last couple of years. Willie Rioli obviously came from West Coast a few years ago. And then, of course, Sam Palpepper, who they've converted into a small forward and a pressure forward, and he's become one of the best in the competition at that. So West Coast on the board now, and their pick is in. It's what, their third
Jeez, they
pick,
went
third
very,
pick
very
of the night,
quickly.
fourth pick of the night?
Yeah, it's their 4th pick. Harley Reid, Archer Reid and Clay Hall, of course. Their last pick, local talent and dad, Derek, played 2 games for the West Coast Eagles, and with pick number 49, West Coast have selected Harvey Johnston from the Sandringham Dragons.
Yeah, that's right. And he was in the mix for that earlier pick for them, where they obviously went with Archer Reid. He's been eyed off here. A player from the Sandringham Dragons, as you say, Nat, a forward midfielder. Had a really good game against WA for Vic Metro as well, with 29 touches to be one of Vic Metro's best that day. This was it. And was able to get that link-up play from half forward and through the midfield as well. So tested really well at the Combine. Averaged about 18 disposals through the middle of the season as well for the Dragons. So another player from the Sandringham Dragons program finds his way to the AFL level.
Clearly West Coast just needed talent and they needed a range of different players. The Giants now on the board, you'd think they, now having taken 3 picks, they'd probably pick Harvey Thomas here, who is a member of their Northern Academy program. The plan was to take 3 or 4 picks into the draft, and Thomas was always one of those in their consideration. They were just pending whether or not a bid got matched for them. Could they even do something like potentially trade back here, try and get a future pick in, and stock up future picks, or do they just take Harvey Thomas here and just say that's it, that's enough for us?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. They might just grab him.
Yeah.
There are probably not too many more clubs that are going to be trading up at this point. There's probably only a maximum of 10 or so picks left in the night. Don't expect
I was
too
going to
many
say,
more.
we're nearly at the end.
Yeah, and there's still some players on the board. Ari Shellmaker, George Stevens, Archie Roberts, Jack Delaney we've spoken about, Will Lorenz, Vigo Vicentini. So there's a few guys there who we'll be hoping to have their name over the next little bit.
And then how many selections? Just projecting, of course, to tomorrow. And don't forget to tune in live on afl.com.au from 3 o'clock tomorrow, Australian Eastern Daylight Time, because we will have the rookie draft, of course, and I'm off, so it's just you two getting the job done. But how many selections are you thinking in the rookie draft, or it's hard to predict?
No, not many. Not many live picks used on young kids who haven't been in the system before, and we'll see probably about 15 players get re-rookied by their clubs who've been delisted and re-rookied, so there's been commitments in there, and there is a trade that's come through. So let's have a look at the details as that one comes in. The trade there is the Giants have traded pick 50 to St Kilda for their future third round selection. So that one is something that we look at as well. What do they do here, the Saints?
Yeah, so they've taken Darcy Wilson, Lance Collard, so we've got the speed sorted, and then Angus Hastie was their selection tonight.
Yeah, and another player with some speed who could be on the radar here is Hugo Garcia. He's a player from the Calder Cannons who has been linked a little bit to the Saints, so whether he's someone, given his, again, another player with pace, 2.93 seconds at the combine, and he shows that in his game to a midfielder, he's a possibility here.
All right, well, the pick is in. We wait for that to come through here on afl.com.au. So just repeating that news that it was the Giants, thank you, traded out their pick. Thanks, Riley, for a future third to St Kilda.
And smart business by them too to do that, because as you said, Riley, regardless, they're probably going to get Harvey Thomas at one point or another. So you do it here and then you do that trade and then you get the pick for nothing and match a bit later.
So they've added a midfielder in Hugo Garcia with pick number 50 in this year's draft. So Hugo becomes a Saint, Cal.
Yeah, he does. And as I said, look at the way St Kilda's approached this draft with Wilson coming in, Collard coming in, Garcia coming in. So these are three players with genuine toe at different parts of the ground as well. 185 centimetre midfield option from the Cannons. He's got some spark through that part of the ground, and the Ross Lyon mantra clearly has been to get some extra speed into the lineup.
I'm disappointed you haven't used the need for speed line today after
the need for Reid.
I know, but your glasses, your Tom Cruise
They've got
look.
the need.
Need for Reid. Okay, Brisbane are on the clock now. 4 minutes and 11 seconds left as we take a look at the Brisbane Lions. Two tall forwards. That's who they've taken so far tonight. They didn't have a selection on night one, so it's been all about night two for them as we take a look. Luke Lloyd, their last pick, and Logan Morris as well. So two different key forwards, one more of a crash and bash and the other more a lead-up forward.
And that might change whether they, we spoke a little bit earlier about their interest in Sam Van Rooyen. Now do they need another one on top of that? Maybe not.
Don't want to be too greedy. Leave some key forwards out there.
Aidan O'Driscoll is another player as well who they could look at here as a small forward. So he's a big runner and hard runner, different player to his older brother.
All right, well, the pick is in for the Brisbane Lions with pick 51. We wait and see what they do this time to add to their list. Of course, made the grand final, lost by just a little bit to the Pies. They'll be looking to finish in that top four once again in 2024. And can they take it one step further and win a premiership, the Brisbane Lions?
They can.
Thanks. I was just leaving it open, but they can. Look
at the list built over the number of years. I mean, this has been built out and born out of some great drafting. 2016, the McCluggage-Berry draft. We know that. Rayner the following year after that as well. They've done so well. Starcevic, Zach Bailey, and then on top of that, since then, the acquisitions of Danaher and Cameron and Neil, and then now they've got Duday as well coming through as a free agent as well. It's been an appealing place for players to join, and the pick is in.
With pick 51, the Brisbane Lions have recruited a WA boy in Zane Zakostelski, who models his game on Freo skipper Alex Pearce, and I think he's a Freo supporter, actually.
There you go. Well, it's funny because he's played a fair bit of this year as a ruckman, but he's going to be picked and has been picked as a key back, and we're seeing some of his highlights here playing in defence as an athletic, tall defender, and athleticism is the word that comes to mind straight away when you think about him. He was terrific at the combine, 20-metre sprint in 2.95 seconds. That's elite for a player his size, 196 centimetres. So the Lions have never been afraid of grabbing a West Australian prospect as well. He goes to join their group and add to the tall forwards who they've already brought in tonight.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they've got Harris Andrews, Darcy Gardner, who came back into the side late in the year as well, and Jack Payne, who played some good footy as well throughout the 2023 season. So they've got that bunch of key defenders. They added to that with Tom Doedee. I wonder if they've thought we probably might like one more key defender, given the fact that Tom Doedee is going to miss a large chunk of the 2024 season as he recovers from that ACL injury. So I wonder if they've looked at that and thought maybe that's a way that we could get there. It's interesting because now Hawthorn have just done the GWS thing, which is we're probably going to take Cal Shadir with our last pick. We don't necessarily need this selection. Let's trade it back to Port Adelaide for a future 4th round pick. Get something in next year. Port Adelaide back on the clock, with pick 52.
All right, we wait to see what Port Adelaide do with their second selection for tonight. But just back on Zane Zakasteltzig, I was reading an article about him and just the fact that he was overlooked as part of the Claremont Colts team at the start of this year. And I think that really served as a bit of a wake-up call. He was cut from the squad the year before as well. So it's one of these stories about determination and persistence, it really, isn't it?
Yeah, and our man in the West, Nathan Schmuck, did a great chat with him as well through that story. Yep. So it is a good story of persistence, and now he goes to the club furthest away in Brisbane, right across the country, and gets to apply his trade there. But he'll be given time to develop. But they clearly had identified those two parts of the ground as adding some extra depth if they could.
3 key position players as well.
Yeah,
for the Lions.
That's it.
Those 3 picks. So Port Adelaide here, Cal.
Well,
what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously just taken their last pick, so we saw them do that. Now we look at Lorenz, I think, is an opportunity here potentially from the Oakley Chargers. That's a chance. Liam Walters is a chance as well. He's a midfielder who's got some interest as well. Small forward they grabbed in Anastasopoulos, so does that rule out Rawlinson from South Australia's team? That's a possibility. Sometimes it can work against you, sometimes it doesn't though. We've just seen that with the Lions in particular, that they've taken some particular types.
Last pick of the 3rd round of the draft as well, this one. So that one's flown by. But yeah, really interesting, as we mentioned before, the Giants knowing they were going to take Harvey Thomas with their last pick, trading out of that selection, and Hawthorn with back-to-back picks knowing that one of them has to be used on. So if they didn't do that, essentially, and bought into next year's draft with a future 4th round pick, they would have just been taking Cal Shadir with 52 and passing on 53. So they can essentially just get a future 4 and then use 53 on Cal Shadir anyway.
Smart, isn't it? But that's all the strategy, and I love that's what you guys have to offer, is just that extra bit of analysis and strategic thinking behind all of this.
There's so much going on in the draft.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
There's so many rules to get your head around. There's so many different manoeuvres to make, so it is good fun.
And Hawthorn have now traded out again to Sydney. So this is what they've done. They've moved back to 59. They've got another future 4th round pick in. So Port Adelaide have got their pick. They've taken their pick. The pick is in. But Hawthorn's traded the next pick beyond that as well.
We've had Bidney last year. We don't have a tradney.
They did trade out of the 1st round of the draft last year for Josh Weddle, of course.
You can tell we've been doing this for a little while when our brains just start to go a little bit mush. Here we go. With pick 52, the Port Adelaide Football Club has selected Lachlan Charlson from the GWV Rebels, a forward, Cal.
He is a forward. I saw him kick an 8-goal haul late in the season, and he was terrific. Yeah, and that probably is the game that's gotten him drafted. He kicked 24 goals for the year for the Rebels and is a hard-working player. A little bit of a Lockie Schultz about him. That's the type of small forward I would say he's like if you're looking for an AFL comparison. So the Power clearly have identified that in their own way as an area they wanted to grow as well. Fantasia leaves the footy club. But they've always been a club with small forwards and quality small forwards under the Ken Hinkley era, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've always been pretty dangerous around goal and had some players in that part of the ground who can do some exciting things. He can do that, and Anastasopoulos can do that. So that's been their 2 picks so far.
And I like it. As we mentioned before, Willie Rioli and Sam Powell-Pepper have played a really key role for that side throughout 2023. Swans now trading up from 59 to this pick at 53. Their pick is now in.
All right. The Sydney Swans with pick 53. How far can I drag this out?
Well, Caden Cleary last night, of course, who they matched a bid on after taking Will Green.
Yeah, and they're probably only thinking about using 2 picks as well. So the total picks might actually bounce out a couple more because we've seen a couple of clubs end up with extra picks coming through. The father-son still to come, Harvey Thomas still to come. So still a few more picks on the board, but time is running out though for a number of guys who are hoping to see their opportunity tonight.
All right, well, with pick 53, the Sydney Swans have selected Patrick Snell, who is a key defender. So another type after taking a ruckman last night in Wilburn.
Yeah, and another player from the Allies program as well to get a gig at AFL level. So a different part of the Allies program. He's actually from Queensland, but the Lions didn't, and the Brisbane Academy, but the Lions didn't have access to match him under Academy rules. So he hadn't been living in the state long enough to be eligible for full Academy rules. So the Lions don't get to match that bid for him. The Swans have eyed him off as a key defensive option for them. Obviously, we know they took their ruckman earlier in the draft. I think Connor O'Sullivan would have been the perfect addition for them. And then the midfielder in Caden Cleary. We expect them to look for an academy player as well in tomorrow's rookie draft. Indy Kirk is a chance to be selected as well, the son of Brett Kirk, under academy or father-son academy rules. Sorry.
I think Brett was presenting some Guernseys potentially last night as well for the Sydney Swans.
Green, Cleary, Snell, Kirk.
We just love the footy. 194 centimetres as well. They needed a bit of key position depth in the back line. Of course, they brought in Joel Hamling, but I was wondering even when they did that move for him via free agency from Fremantle, whether or not they might eye a key defender in this trade period. You mentioned Connor O'Sullivan as being someone that could have been high on their board. Gold Coast now on the clock. Are we expecting them to pass here after taking 4 academy players? No, they're not.
Oh,
they are picking.
Okay, here we go. Who's left?
Well, we obviously know that...
No, they have passed.
They've passed. So last night, they obviously had their night. And if we talked about North Melbourne as being a big winner last night with their 5 selections, of course, the Gold Coast Suns are a massive winner too with their 4 academy selections.
The other part is we probably, based on that, probably don't think there's going to be other clubs moving up the board now because that pick was free, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was up for grabs to trade. So if every club or any club wanted to get up, they knew that one was gettable. And then... after that, I can't see any club wanting to do that now.
We're expecting Richmond to pass here as well?
Most likely.
A couple of picks already.
Likely.
Well, yeah, so Richmond, Kane McAuliffe from South Australia, 2 South Australian players because Liam Fawcett was the other one. And then, of course, you mentioned Ben Miller being upgraded. So perhaps we thought earlier in the night that Richmond was done, and we'll see. They've got 4 minutes to decide what they're doing and whether they're going to pass. And then Gold Coast, we assume with pick 50, they're done now. So that pick will get wiped. And then Richmond again. So if they pass here, that'll also get wiped. So things will move on a little bit more quickly. So we've had 53 players in total selected, if my maths is correct tonight. So that's where we're at, 29 players last night. We thought we'd get to the 55, 60 mark, and as you mentioned, Cal Shadir still to come.
And Harvey Thomas
and
still
Harvey
to come
Thomas.
as well. Most likely. I mean, the Giants could get Harvey Thomas as a rookie too.
Yeah, okay.
I thought that he'd probably be a national pick, but if he doesn't get selected tonight, they can also go and get him as a Category B rookie tomorrow. If he doesn't get picked, they'll get first access to that. They can automatically do that and list him as a Category B rookie.
And for Melbourne fans as well, probably tomorrow's rookie draft is where Melbourne has committed to selecting father-son Kynan Brown as well. So don't stress if his name isn't called tonight. That's for tomorrow.
He's a lock. That's confirmed. If he gets through tonight, he will get to Melbourne tomorrow, and that's probably where we've seen him. He's had a really consistent season for the Oakleigh Chargers and also Vic Metros. Regularly one of the best and biggest ball winners for his team, and through the midfield, he just can find the footy. And developed really nicely. So
that's the rookie draft tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Make sure you tune into afl.com.au and the AFL Live app. Of course, there's so much content still to come across our platforms over the next couple of weeks because we are right in the middle of AFLW finals as well. We've got preliminary finals this weekend. We've got the W show, of course, dropping on Thursday morning. So make sure you tune into that because Emily Bates, a Hawthorn star, but also a star of the competition, is set to join Sarah Ollie and Sarah Black and Gemma Bastiani. Then we've got the AFLW Night of Nights, the W Awards on Monday night. We'll have full coverage on our platforms of that. And then, of course, the grand final on Sunday, December 3.
There we go.
Got through it now.
And the AFLW draft, don't forget that too. That is coming on December 18. So there's still so much more to come on AFL.com.au.
They found a way to trade back again.
They did find a taker.
What is going on here, Richmond?
3 trade backs from the Tigers tonight.
Well, at least it's made it entertaining and amusing for us sitting at this desk.
So they've traded the pick out of the draft, essentially. So it doesn't give
done?
any indication they're going to take another pick if they trade that one out of the draft, unless they think whoever they want is at pick 56. So Essendon back on the board, Cal.
Yeah, I'm not sure who they could look at here. Cooper Trembath is a key back they could look at potentially. Riley Weatherall's a taller forward who maybe they have a punt on at this point. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what they'll be doing here, but clearly they've identified a player that they're happy with. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done it.
Interesting, isn't it? Because Gold Coast passed and they didn't look to trade that off to Essendon. Talk me through how that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe it was pre-organised with...
It might have been pre-organised. Okay. It also might have been that they just thought, okay, the decision's made here. We've had an extra bit of time. Let's go and get this player.
Yeah,
maybe had a little bit more extra time.
Yeah,
it doesn't really make too much difference other than Gold Coast not getting that option. But
whether they really needed it or not.
Yeah, and that can happen sometimes. So they've made the pick now.
Okay, well the pick is in...
So Nate Caddy and Luhrmann Lowell, who they've taken already.
And with pick 54, Essendon has selected Archie Roberts, who we spoke about at the start of the show. It's taken a little while, but the attacking half-back from the Sandringham Dragons finally gets his spot on an AFL list.
Yeah, okay, so they traded in to get him, so clearly they think it was a bit of a slider. It's still available there on the board. A player from the Sandringham Dragons, a back-to-back premiership player there as well. All-Australian honours for Vic Metro too. A half-back who's quite penetrating with his ball use, can direct the play from half-back too and likes it in his hands. So Archie Roberts gets his opportunity. Probably would have been sweating over the last few picks, I'd imagine, about that one, but he comes in to the Bombers mix, and probably a good word from Matthew Lloyd wouldn't have heard as well. That's
three.
Three times Lloyd he's got
three for everyone watching at home.
But a very proud Haileybury coach, I'm sure he'll be, with Archie Roberts going to his club, the Bombers.
Do you reckon you can stretch it out to a fourth, Matthew Lloyd?
I think that's it.
Okay,
I think that's it.
I'm surprised he didn't get any when Luke Lloyd was picked.
I know. I was thinking that when Luke Lloyd's name came up, and I'm like, surely this is...
I think it became probably the point for Archie Roberts where, for clubs, and clearly Essendon was there, must have just thought that it was too good to pass up on. You have to come back into the draft to get someone like him. Richmond now back on the clock at 55, because Gold Coast, as we know, they'd passed through all of their selections, having done that with the pick previous. So they are off the board now. Richmond at pick 55, back onto the clock.
Okay, what do they do here? Are they going to actually use it? Oh, I think they're going to use it.
There you go.
They passed.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, so they're done. So Richmond are now done, as we thought. So Kane McAuliffe and Liam Fawcett, a duo from South Australia, very different players though, a midfielder and a tall forward. They become Richmond players tonight, which is fantastic news for them and their families. And then Ben Miller will be upgraded onto the main list there at Tigerland. So the Tigers done. A tick for them tonight, and the Western Bulldogs now on the clock with pick 55. They've already taken Riley Sanders, Jordan Croft. That happened last night. Jordan Croft, of course, a father-son. And then Joel Frazier, a midfielder, a winger at 191 centimetres, was taken tonight. And then Lachlan Smith, who is an aggressive ruckman. I liked how you described him.
He's got a bit of aggro about him. He's very competitive, that's for sure. And I think we'll see him play not too far away. He's a bit more ready-made. They have got a mix, though, haven't they? I mean, I love the Colonel pick for them. It was a great pick for them. I think that was a perfect scenario for them. He's going to come in and probably be one of their better midfielders of the under-24s on the list already. So he's a nice addition.
Okay, let's see.
And he'll be playing a lot next year as well.
Yes, he will.
So we've had a couple of passes, but now I think we're getting ready for an actual player to be selected, which would be the 55th player of the 2023 AFL draft. And with pick 55, the Western Bulldogs have selected Aidan O'Driscoll. So we have another O'Driscoll in the AFLW system. Of course, not joining his brother and sister at Fremantle. But tell me about Aidan. What kind of player is he as a midfielder?
Well, he's very different to his older brother, who's a bigger-bodied midfielder, plays on the wing as well. Aidan O'Driscoll is more of a smaller forward and sometime midfield, 175 centimetres. He reminds me of Hayden Ballantyne, just the swagger, a bit of Brent Daniels there as well in the way he zips around and uses the footy. So he can run really well, like his siblings too. So that's obviously in the genes, but a different type, and comes into their mix, the Dogs, as a small forward. They're obviously weighing up Nick Watson at the top end of the draft. They get a small forward at the back end of the draft.
I think they did need a more generic type of small forward on their list. They've got Cody Waitman, who's obviously one of the best small forwards in the competition, but you say that, but he's not really a small forward, is he, Cody Waitman? He's more of that sort of marking type. He likes to go for his mark. Yeah, he's sort of like a medium-sized key forward. So, they get Aidan O'Driscoll into the football club, tested really well with his speed in the 20-metre sprint as well at the Combine. So that'll be something that they'll really sort of be hoping to see at AFL level in the next couple of years.
Yep.
So Hawthorn are on the clock at the moment. Do we feel like this is the moment they're taking Cal Shadir?
Unless they want to trade back again.
Could try and trade back again. Otherwise, yes. Yeah, and there's not too many more picks coming now, I wouldn't have thought. The surprise probably for the night so far is that Shellmaker's not been selected, so that's probably one that's still on the board. See if he gets an opportunity. If not tonight, then tomorrow at the rookie draft, someone might take a chance there. Will Lorenz, George Stevens as well, I think would be a rookie chance if not selected over the next couple of picks. Cade Delarue is another one, but obviously the Hawks still have to make this pick, and if it's what we think it is, it's probably the father-son nomination coming through at this point.
Wait and see.
All right, we shall wait
but the pick is in.
See.
This is the benefit of what they did before when they traded out.
Yes.
Got a free future 4th round pick, and you never know what that's for, whether or not they can trade it off for something next year in the trade period, whether or not they can find someone later in the draft next year.
Clubs love nothing more than trading future 4th round picks.
It's, You nearly tried to kill it off early this year, the trade for the future 4th round pick. And
did I?
Because it doesn't have to be involved in a suite of selections anymore.
True.
You said the days of that could be numbered, but it's making a revival tonight.
It has, that's true. The rules changed a little bit on that one, but no, it's remained a strong trade chip.
All right, well, a pick was in for Hawthorn, and I assumed that it was... No, we have a pick, and a great night for the Deer family, because at pick 56, Hawthorn has selected Kausha Deer, of course, the son of the late Paul Deer, who sadly passed away with pancreatic cancer, but a Norm Smith medalist in 1991, a premiership Hawk as well, and Kausha booted 21 goals from 11 games, Cal.
He did. And look, it was his second half of his season that really, I think, was the moment where you start to think, okay, this is a guy who's got some real ability. His marking overhead was exciting. He can play a little bit in the ruck as well. So he adds to their mix again, the Hawks, to be able to know that you can bring in a guy as a father-son like that, 2 father-sons in the 1 year. He'd be wrapped, 195 centimetre player. I think a lot of people are barracking for him pretty hard after what's been a difficult, obviously, period for the family over the last couple of years. But he joins them. His old brother, Harry, was obviously previously at the Crows a few years ago. Paul Deer, former premiership player and Norm Smith medalist at the club as well. So they'll be wrapped to get him into the club.
I think key forward support is something that they've clearly needed over the last couple of seasons. They bring in Mubby or Chol over the trade period on a long-term deal. So he's someone they can hopefully mould him around over the next couple of years. Pick 57, interesting note, Carlton passed. So Port Adelaide now on the clock with pick 57.
Okay, well, we wait and see what Port Adelaide are doing at the moment. But it's now time to get to Sarah Ollie, and I believe she has Simon Dalrymple from the Sydney Swans with her.
I do indeed, Nat. Simon, let's begin with Will Green, your first selection last night at pick 16, a big boy, spoken about as the best ruckman in this draft crop. When did your interest begin to peak in him?
Look, more probably the back end, Sarah. He played Vic Metro, played some really good footy, and then the back half of the year for the Knights improved. He was in the AFL Academy, but probably started a little bit slowly, but really impressed with the way he finished off.
And he gets the mentorship now of Dean Cox and also Brodie Grundy, which is going to be incredible for his improvement, isn't it?
It will be. You certainly hope so, and their expertise is well known. Cox has been outstanding as a ruck coach. Midfield is now taken over as strategy coach at the Swans, so it should be really good for Will.
I mean, these ruckmen, these big boys, they do tend to take a bit longer to develop. Firstly, is Will still growing? And secondly, could you see him debuting next year, or do you think a little bit further down the track?
Look, you never put ceilings on their development, but he's 92 kilos, so 204. The growth sort of started to come to a bit of a stop towards the end of the year, but he has yeah, for an 18-year-old boy, he's quite solid, 92 kilos. Whether he can play next year, Brodie Grundy, Peter Laddams, obviously, yeah. So, but you never know. But we think he won't be a longer-term one compared to some of the others because he's a bit heavier.
Cal, Riley and Nat, over to you.
Simon, the decision to take a ruckman with a first pick, obviously we don't see it all the time. The Swans haven't done it with their first pick this century, actually. Tell us about that decision-making process just from a positional call.
Look, Cal, we always take best player available and probably felt that this year was where our pick fell. Will was right in that range as best player available. We thought there was a bit of a drop-off post Will and just think he's a ruckman with a unique skill set with his ability to cover the ground, ball in hand, and having experienced the Tim English selection, that was a great parameter to follow in terms of development and what he might become, what we hope he does become, which is, yeah, potentially a really good AFL player.
Simon, we weren't sure if you'd dip back into the draft tonight or just leave it at 2 selections, but you did. You took Patrick Snell. What did you see from him throughout the season? What do you hope he can add to the Sydney Swans ranks over the next couple of years?
Look, Riley, yeah, Pat was one that we were impressed with his champs. His work with Brizzy Lions Academy early in the year was more as a forward. We probably see him as a key defender. That was a need that we were looking at through the whole trade draft period. So just his speed, competitiveness. Spike McVeigh coached him for the Allies, so we had a really good insight into what sort of character he was. He was. We think he'll be a really good key defender long term.
And do you think we'll see Indy Kirk, obviously the son of Brett Kirk, Sydney champion for so long, do you think we'll see him as a chance in the rookie draft tomorrow?
Yes, he would be a chance for sure, yeah.
Simon, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. Go and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks. Cheers, Nat.
Simon Dalrymple there from the Sydney Swans, and thanks of course to Sarah Ollie, who's done a terrific job out at Marvel Stadium tonight and of course last night as well with all those interviews with the draftees. The pick is in for Port Adelaide, who have already taken a couple of players, a couple of crafty small forwards, and with pick 57 they've taken Will Lorenz.
Yeah, and this is a guy who this time last year probably was shaping as an earlier selection, but is available deeper tonight, and the Power have been linked to him a little bit over the course of the lead up to the draft. A left footer, uses the ball pretty nicely, plays on the wing and also across the forward line. He was actually really good last year on grand final day, where he was exceptional in this game here on the MCG on grand final morning. So he's the grandson of former Hawthorn Premiership captain and AFL Hall of Fame member Graham Arthur. So some good footy genes in the family as well.
Very nice. I like that little
No
fun
grandfather-son rule, unfortunately.
I know. Well, I just was getting a bit greedy there for a second. That's okay. We're all right with the father-son rule at the moment as is. All right, so Will Lorenz makes his way to Port Adelaide. So Geelong are on the clock at the moment.
Yep.
As we go back and take a look at what they've done so far in this year's draft. It all started with Connor O'Sullivan, a key defender who they took with their first pick. Then Mitch Edwards, of course, a ruckman, and then Sean Manor, which is just one of the best stories of tonight's draft, a 26-year-old who was best on ground in a grand final, albeit a loss with Werribee in the VFL this year. But what a story for him to get a chance.
Oh, it's fantastic. And he goes to a club that's got a proven track record of playing these guys and giving them opportunities and giving them a crack. I mean, Tim Kelly was a famous one, obviously, a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And what I know a short period, but what a period it was for the Cats in that case. So they make their call here. And here it is. They've picked up George Stevens from the Greater Western Victoria Rebels with pick 58. So this is the value of playing VFL footy. And here he is. He's already donned the hoops. This is him in the VFL late in the season, where he was actually really strong. He showed he can be a ball winner. I think his second half of the season this year, George, was terrific. He really got going after doing an ACL the previous year and starting this year as a half-back, a booming, long-kicking half-back. We saw him move and take his size and mature body into the midfield. He can be a clearance beast, this guy. There's potential for him to be a Josh Kennedy type of midfielder. He's a
bull, isn't he?
He's a big fella, and I think he's ready to play in that capacity as well. So he just knows where the ball is, and we saw that for the Rebels later in the year. So the Cats clearly were pleased with what they saw firsthand in the VFL program.
And I think they've got vacancies either if he starts his career off half-back or if he starts his career through the midfield. I think they clearly need a big, dominant ball winner in the midfield, something they've lacked since Joel Selwood retired after their premiership campaign in 2022. But then off half-back, they don't have too many of this type of player, this type of guy who can be that booming kick off half-back and can really set up the play and direct the play from there. So I think there's vacancies either way there. As the Giants are on the clock now, you do wonder if this is going to be the Harvey Thomas pick, if they pass and take him as a Category B rookie tomorrow, potentially, as well as a couple of options here for the Giants.
All right, we'll wait and see what they do here, the Giants. Just back on the Cats, Riley, just quickly, what have you made of their draft hand so far, the 4 selections?
Yeah, I like them in the sense that they've got a variety of players. They obviously took the key defender in Connor O'Sullivan first, medium-sized forward who can go through the midfield, and Sean Manor with their 3rd pick, and then the guy who can play across half-back and through the midfield is that big-body clearance player in George Stevens. So they've got a really nice variety of players with their picks, the Cats. They're a club that just needs youth coming through. They've, in a similar vein to what we mentioned with Richmond before, they haven't been able to pick early in drafts over the last couple of years or the last decade or so because of the fact they've been so successful within that period. As we said, the Giants take their pick, and is their academy player Harvey Thomas?
Yeah, he's an exciting little player. He's only 176 centimetres. Actually played with Nick Watson at Caulfield Grammar this year. He won the best and fairest ahead of Nick Watson at Caulfield Grammar. Played a couple more games.
9:04 p.m. on the Tuesday night was our first Caulfield Grammar.
I can't believe it took this long.
Left-footed small player who can go all over the ground. Small forward, small back potentially. Bit of Errol Goulden about his movement as well, and sharpness with the ball in hand. So yeah, he's an exciting player. Was boarding, obviously. That's why he was playing with the Oakley Chargers throughout the Coates Talent League season.
All right, so Harvey Thomas makes his way officially to the GWS Giants. So that's 59 selections. We're around about the mark.
Collingwood's passed.
I believe. So Collingwood is passing. So I wonder if this is the end. Just take us through anyone else that's left on the draft board, Cal, that you thought might be a chance. I know we've spoken quite a bit about Ari Schoenmaker tonight, who unfortunately, the super boot potentially of the draft hasn't been picked up. Who else is left on the draft board?
Tarkin O'Leary, who the Eagles have shown some interest in. He could be a possibility here. Maybe a similar type to Harvey Johnston though, so if they do take the pick, that's a possible one there. Kate Delarue, they've had some interest in as well. The Eagles are a medium forward midfielder. They've taken a pick, or they've passed. Wait and see. They've passed.
No, they've passed.
Yeah, so that's their night done.
So we think that perhaps most of the clubs might be done at this point as we wait to see what Fremantle have done already as we look at Fremantle's selections tonight. Of course, they didn't have any selections on the first night of the draft, but Cooper Simpson was their first selection tonight, a pacey midfielder, and then they took Ollie Murphy, a key defender who's at about 200 centimetres. So a nice little mix there for...
I like that too.
The Dockers.
I like that too. I think Simpson's a good player, and just through injury this year at a bad time, probably got through a couple more picks than he probably would have if he had played that full campaign for Vic Country at the championships. But Ollie Murphy as well adds to their key defensive depth, and potentially it's going to be that part-time ruckman. So I've seen him do a little bit of that at school level as well. He's going to be picked as a key defender and a backman. Maybe that Harry Taylor type of key back, if you remember the Cats great.
Yeah, where do you see Fremantle right now? Because it was a disappointing 2023 for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was rough for them, but clearly they've got talent, and they've got talent in their midfield and in their ruck stock, so that's where they can build out of over the next couple of years. Luke Jackson, Sean Darcy in the ruck, and then obviously Caleb Sarong, Andrew Brayshaw, these types that have gone through the midfield and been really impressive over the last couple of years. If they can get Cooper Simpson into that midfield over the next couple of years, he'll only add to that as well.
And obviously a shame that they lost Lockie Schultz. They would have been shattered to lose a player of his ilk from their forward line as well.
And the same as Liam Henry, they would have been shattered to lose him. So it's a couple of tough ones for them. Well, this might be the man they're hoping to replace Lockie
There
Schultz
you go.
with.
Speaking of, with pick 60, Fremantle have selected Jack Deline and a small forward around about that. What is he, 180 centimetres? So not too small.
Deline. Yep. He's kicking goals 9 to 5.
Oh my goodness.
He's
See yourself out,
He's kicked goals for
Calzini.
3 years at different levels. He's just found ways to do it, even playing against some mature players as well. He can mark overhead. He can kick things out of nothing as well. We've seen a couple of his crazy goals for South Australia at the Carnival as well. So he gets his opportunity with the Dockers. I don't think we'll be seeing him straight away, but he could be a pretty lively player. A bit of Cody Waitman about the jump and the style. He can produce some things out of nothing. So Jack Deline joins the Dockers.
Could potentially be their Lockie Schultz replacement, which is what we just spoke about now.
Yes, very, very true. Okay, while Cal is singing and making lame dad jokes, even though he ain't a dad yet, that we know of. Anyway, let's just move on because let's get to Sarah Ollie at Marvel Stadium before we lose the plot here. Sarah, save me. I believe you have West Coast list manager in Rowan O'Brien with you.
I do indeed, and you're going full rogue back in the studio, so let's straighten things up. Rowan, what are 24 hours for your football club? Harley Reid officially off to the West Coast Eagles as the #1 pick. Just how impressed are you with Harley's temperament and ability to handle all the attention? It's been a massive year for him.
Yeah, it has, and it's been very impressive, but the longer the year's gone on, I guess we haven't been surprised at how he's handled things. Even last night was a massive night from a club and from a personal point of view for Harley, and he's just handled it so well. It's been terrific.
And a beautiful moment on stage, Nick Natanui presenting him with the #9 jumper, of course, also worn by Ben Cousins. It's early days and you don't want to put pressure on this kid who's still 18, but do you think he has the ability to be a generational player and a great of your club?
Look, we certainly hope so. Obviously, having pick one and we were offered a number of trades, we had that in mind all the way through. So we don't want to put pressure on him, but, Harley's shown that he's a pretty unique package in a lot of ways. So we're really looking forward to what he can bring.
And you've got the need for Reid because Harley yesterday, Archer today. What can West Coast Eagles fans expect from him?
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, really, having the first pick tonight that Archer was still available. He was obviously a tall kind of forward ruck that we ranked really highly, so we felt that he was a good chance to go last night, and when he was available today, it was just a no-brainer to hold the pick and bring him in.
All right, I'll throw back to Cal, Riley and Nat.
Thanks, Sarah. And just quickly before we do chat to you, Rowan, the Cats have made a selection and grabbed Oliver Wiltshire from Barwon Heads, a local prospect there, so that might finish off their night. Ro, hey, thanks for coming on for a chat. How strong was your interest in getting back into the draft after you grabbed Harley Reid at #1 and with your future first-round selection?
Yeah, it was certainly strong, Cal. We had a crack with what we had in terms of our future first, and we tried hard to get back in. Unfortunately, there was a lot of clubs trying to get in. I think it was a pretty popular move on the night. So with most clubs wanting to stay in this year's draft, it became really hard. But, we had a crack with what we had and unfortunately came up a bit short.
And then you took a couple of players tonight, Ro, as well, in Clay Hall and Harvey Johnston. What can Eagles fans expect from them?
So with Clay, obviously he's a local boy from Peel Thunder. He's played a fair bit of senior footy this year, league footy at Peel, so he's predominantly an inside mid, but he's really strong in the contest, really high in character, and we're looking forward to what he can bring there. And with Harvey, he's played both as a high forward and as a mid for both Metro and Sandy Dragons, also played a little bit of VFL with Sandringham this year. We think he's got a really big upside. He'll probably start more on the outside, but has a lot of time with the footy, and we think as he matures he'll be able to play a number of roles, including through the midfield.
Rowan, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your 2023 draft. Of course, Harley Reid, we look forward to seeing what he can do on the footy field, and best of luck for season 2024.
Thanks, Nat. Appreciate it.
Rowan O'Brien, their West Coast list manager. What a draft they have had as the club looks to climb back up the ladder and once again return to being a powerhouse of the competition.
Just want to ask you about Ollie Wiltshire, someone that a lot of fans, as St Kilda, we said there, take Ari Schoenmaker as well. So great news for Ari to get picked up. But I want to ask you about Ollie Wiltshire, going to Geelong, Bowen Heads product, someone that you haven't seen a lot of if you're just following under-18s footy this year, because he's been stashed away in that local league.
Yeah, and a lot of clubs have had a look at him. He's been on the radar a little bit for that level. Bowen Heads, as you say, 21 years old, a bit of an attacking defender. So, looking forward to seeing how their latest product out of the local leagues down there worked. They've obviously had pretty good success out of Tom Stewart, haven't they?
Yeah.
And what about Ari Schoenmaker? We've been speaking about him a fair bit and mentioned his name. We was probably still surprised he was on the draft board, and St Kilda have swooped. Look at this left foot. It is incredible. Thank you very much.
It's an extreme weapon, and it's his weapon of choice. He's just the half-back player who can kick, and he's the player who can rebound and break the lines with his ability to just whack it on that left foot. So, yeah, that's what he does. He's the ball user, and he plays across that half-back line, 194 centimetres, so a bit taller than the average half-back, but a longer kick than the average player himself. So he was actually in the Super Boot kick, wasn't he? The longest kicking competition on grand final day. So, look, he'd be rapt that he gets this opportunity. Another player out of Tasmania as well. So great to see a further player added to what's been a great draft for Tasmania.
It has, and a great draft for the Allies as well. A really, truly national draft, which is fantastic to see. So Hawthorn passed just a minute ago. Then we've got Geelong back on
Melbourne
the
also
clock.
passed
Melbourne passed, you're right. So we've had 62 players selected in the 2023 AFL draft.
Well,
Could that be it?
My modelling...
Oh, you're modelling now.
No. My modelling suggested it was 52 to 62 picks. So I think if it's any more, it won't be many more from here. Yeah.
Okay, you willing to put anything on that, or
Well,
a Malteser?
I put a Malteser on it. I think we might be just about done.
Okay, all right, we will see, and of course we might cross back into Sarah Ollie.
The Cats could take a pick here, though. There are some Geelong Falcons prospects that they've had a look at this point of the draft as well. Joe Pike being one of them, the ruckman there, so that's a possibility.
So they've taken 5 picks already in this year's draft.
Michael Rudd, another one as well, a tall forward.
And they love a local prospect, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and they've grabbed a couple already in Wiltshire in particular. So yeah, that's one that they can sometimes turn their head to the Falcons late as well.
Yeah.
All right, so this is, Geelong and then Collingwood and then Geelong again and St Kilda. So we'll just recap, I guess, what some of the other clubs have done tonight. I mean, Adelaide finished pretty early on in the night. We spoke to Hamish Ogilvie as well at the top of the show, Adelaide's national recruiting manager, and Daniel Curtin. That was the big call that we were all waiting for on night 1 of the draft. And then, of course, they go and get Charlie Edwards as well. And then Oscar Ryan, which was a bit of a surprise of the first night of the draft.
Thought there might be a chance to grab him later, but not there. I thought that might be if they did a flick back and got a pick later on. But look, they liked him enough to grab him as a top 30 selection, and a good hand for them overall with Curtin. Obviously the key piece in that. Charlie Edwards they had their eyes on as well as a number of clubs in the teens did. The Giants, North Melbourne also were interested in him. St Kilda too. Sydney had a level of interest as well, so they grabbed him at that pick 21 later into the first round. So he's a good player. I like Charlie Edwards, and he'll add something a little bit different to their midfield mix if he can get going as a taller player as well, 189 centimetres.
I think the biggest positive for Adelaide is that they conducted what was the most blockbuster trade of the night, in the sense that they got into pick 8, which a number of clubs were trying to do. They got in there to take Dan Curtin, who was the one that every club was going for in that region. But they still kept their 3 first-round picks. So they started the night with 10, 14 and 20. Yeah, they might have jumbled around, but they still wound out of the draft with 3 first-rounders, despite the fact of having to get in a bit earlier to grab Dan Curtin. So that's a big win for the Crows, I think, the fact that they were able to retain all 3 first-round selections, which is what they were going to take regardless. They had 3 picks available. They were only going to take 3 picks, and they might have pushed out a little bit, but they managed to get Dan Curtin to do that. So I think they can look back at this draft and be really happy with what they've managed to do.
So Brisbane, obviously, the grand finalists from 2023, they came into this draft wanting key position players, and they got 3 of them tonight. Logan Morris, a tall forward, another tall forward in Luke Lloyd, and then they got a key defender in Zane Zakastelski.
Yep.
That's a pretty good haul for a team that, you know, is pretty strong across all lines.
Yeah, they don't want for too much, do they, the Lions? And they're able to fill some some depth issues there as well. Jack Gunston leaves the footy club. Logan
Yes.
Morris can be that guy. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit of him next year.
Okay.
The Kyle Langford type of forward. He can move up the ground. He's marking such a key part of his game. So Luke Lloyd, a little bit different in that he's so mobile and crafty around goal. And then Zach Kostelski, well, as a key back, well, there's going to be options for him down the track as well.
Fascinated by what the Cats do here with 30 seconds to go in their allotted 5 minutes of time.
If they were going to pass, they would have done that pretty quickly, do you think?
Yeah, if they're trying to figure out list spots, if they're trying to figure out rookie spots for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact
if they
that they've
wanna
already got
retain-
5 players.
Yeah, if they want to retain someone, retain a spot for the SSP period, what could slip
Because they
through
came
for
in
them
with
there?
7 draft picks, have selected
Yes.
5 players.
So it's an interesting one. 5 seconds to go. Still haven't picked. So yeah, it's going to be. Can you buy more time here, Kel?
Well,
We'll have to
Yeah,
see.
we'll have to see. Let's just take a minute to look at Carlton while we wait for this pick to come through.
The pick is in though. They've made it. They've made a selection.
Okay, so they haven't passed here. So, but just looking at Carlton, Ashton Moyer and then Billy Wilson tonight, just the 2 selections.
Yes, Ashton Moyer, the forward who can kick on either foot and really classy in that position. He probably hasn't had the top age season he would have liked in underage footy. And then, of course, Billy Wilson, the dashing half back who we said Carlton might want a half back at some stage throughout this draft, and they've managed to get one in Billy Wilson.
Okay, pick 63.
Okay.
Lawson Humphreys is the selection for the Geelong Football Club. Not a name that's familiar to me, but I'm sure it's somewhere in your brain.
bit of a smoky for the Cats. We always
Okay.
say if there's going to be a club that takes a smoky, it's the Cats. They've grabbed 2 here with Wiltshire and Lawson Humphreys. So he's a medium forward from WA. Got some real skills and turn of speed as well. So
And another mature ager. He's 20 years old, so another one that they've picked out that's got some experience on his side. We say experience, he's still only 20, but not your typical 18-year-old draftee.
yeah, and often the decision for these clubs, and this might have been part of the decision here too, is do we grab a guy now with maybe some projection about him, or do we try and look at him for next year's mid-season draft or as a train-on? But then you open yourself up to other clubs also seeing him and the development coming through there where you might lose access to them next year. So they've clearly seen enough to go, yep, let's bring him down and have a look.
All right, well, the Giants national recruiting manager, I should say, Adrian Caruso, is now with Sarah Ollie back at Marvel Stadium. Sarah.
Adrian, so many wonderful moments last night at the draft, but one of my favourite was when Phoenix Gothard had his name read out. He was absolutely surprised there as a guest of Connor O'Sullivan. He's changing shirts. That's what the draft night's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad we could provide some entertainment like we did last year, I suppose. It was a great story, and yeah, hopefully it's one everyone can remember for a long time, and hopefully he has a great career for us.
A small forward who's got a lot of speed. Do you see him just suiting that Giants kind of play?
Absolutely. I think it's pretty obvious what we're targeting. Since Adam Kingsley's come on board, we've really identified that that's an area that we wanted to really bolster. We took Darcy Jones last year. He did his ACL, but we've got high hopes for him. But pairing up Gothard as well as, we've already got Daniels and Bedford. We're really confident in that small brigade that we've put together.
It's going to be a crafty forward line indeed. And then 5 picks later, you get Mr. Fix-It in James Leake. I'm not sure there needs to be much fixing at the Giants, but where can you see him plugging holes?
It's a great question. Honestly, don't know. We just picked him because we liked him. We think he's so versatile. He's so competitive. He plays the Giants' way, and now it's up to Kingers and the other coaches to work out where they want to best use him. But we're confident he can play, all 3 lines. We've seen that, and now it's just up to the coaches to work that out.
All right, Nat, Riley and Cal, over to you.
Adrian, talk us through the thought process behind a couple of those live trades. You obviously moved back from what ultimately ended up being pick 8. You traded that to Adelaide. You still got your man Phoenix Gothard a bit later, but then you shifted to upper spot as well into St Kilda's pick to take James Leake.
Yeah, I suppose the first part of it was once we committed to taking Phoenix with the first pick, based on our information, there was some level of risk that a couple of clubs ahead of our pick 16 were going to pick Phoenix or at least consider him, and we just didn't want to miss out on him. Even if it was a small chance, there was interest elsewhere. So we thought let's use our first pick to take him. The Crows offered us a good deal, so we felt comfortable moving back 3 spots and still grabbing Phoenix. So that was the first part of the deal. The second part was, I suppose, once Leake got to a position where we felt we could trade up to get him, we started making some calls. We actually felt as though St Kilda might have picked Leake. They'd done a bit of work on him and they'd had an interest, and I suppose at that point there was also a risk that someone else could jump up above us and grab him from the Saints. So we sort of just wanted to lock it away and use that future second that we'd gained from the Crows in that other deal to get, Phoenix. And at that point, we just, that was our dream scenario, I suppose, to get those two players. So in the end, it's worked out in our favour.
When it became clear that Dan Curtin was probably going to slide through to your selection, how frantic were those few days for you, Adrian? Because it was a crazy time from the outside. I imagine the phone calls coming through would have been pretty manic as well.
Yeah, Cal, it was interesting. The calls were coming. I wouldn't say it was frantic. I feel like when you've got 2 or 3 days, I think it was probably Thursday, Friday last week that we got wind that, the chances were growing and you were reporting it and it sounded as though it was heading that way. But I suppose we had time. We were in no rush. We wanted to sit back, gather all the intel, all the information over the weekend and get to Monday and having all the information laid out, make a call. It was tough on Monday when we got together to sit down and discuss all those options, in particular the West Coast Future First, which in the end, I think there's probably 4 or 5 clubs that had opportunities to trade for that West Coast Future First and didn't do it. Everyone picked their player and we were in the same boat. Obviously it could be of appeal, but we've had a bit of luck in the past trading into the future, but you just never know. And at the end of the day, given where our list is at and how highly we rated those players that we ended up drafting, we felt we just wanted to take those 2 players, stay in this year's draft. And once we realised that was our strategy, the best offer on the table was the Crows one.
How strongly did you consider taking Dan Curtin at that pick, though? Obviously, a lot of clubs were coming in for him. Adelaide, as we know, but West Coast were trying to get up, as you just mentioned there. Was it ever a possibility that you would have taken Dan Curtin there?
I suppose once it became real that we thought he could slide to us, we had done the work. But I think for us in the end, we realised that the better scenario for us was to go a different way. We really rate Dan and we think he's going to be, a really good player. But for us, ultimately, we see his best position being as a backman, and we just feel like our back line at the moment is so settled. We don't really see any in for someone like a Dan, given where, we're at with Taylor, Buckley, Iden and Himmelberg. Dan just wouldn't have fit into that group and we're not confident that he would have gone past any of those players in the short term. So we felt the best fit for us was to prioritise other types.
Adrian, we appreciate your time tonight joining us on Draft Night Live. Congratulations on your draft hand and go and enjoy the rest of the night. You can breathe a little bit until tomorrow, of course.
Thank you.
Adrian Caruso there, the Giants National Recruiting Manager. Okay, we've had quite a few passes in this time, which I'm thinking
we're pretty close to the end.
We might be pretty close to the end. We've had 63 selections tonight overall, I should say, in the 2023 AFL draft. 29 selections last night. You do the math. It's too late for me to actually calculate that in my head at this point. But 63 players overall have been drafted, which is fantastic news. Of course, the rookie draft happens tomorrow at 3 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and it'll be Riley and Cal hosting that one. Looking forward to seeing what happens there.
And it's in line with about the amount of picks that we've seen over the last few years as well. So in 2020 there was 59 picks used at the national draft. 2021 there was 65 picks, last year 59, so another 63 tonight. It's about what's become the new normal for the live selections used, and clubs have other means and avenues to put players onto lists, obviously through the pre-season mechanism and mid-season draft next year. We might even see a mid-season trade next year, which will be fascinating as well.
Cannot wait to see what that throws up for us. Now, the 2023 draft is nearly over, but we're always looking ahead. We're always future looking and future planning, Cal. So
here we go, Cal.
2024.
Call it here.
What draft crop are we looking at? Who are we looking at? Who are some of the names that we should be keeping an eye out as 2024 hits us?
Yeah, it's looking like a midfield crop next year,
Yep.
and that's partly the interest that came from other clubs in Dan Curtin as well, because they could see this year getting towards some variety in the draft, and next year sort of heading towards being some midfielders. So the likes of Finn O'Sullivan, Jagger Smith, Christian Moraes, Josh Smiley, Sid Draper, Murphy Reid, these guys are all midfielders who are going to be pretty close to the top rungs next season. Of course, Tyler Welsh as well. Will be tied to the Crows father-son program, so they'll have that consideration for them next year. And the one other midfielder that we can't forget is Levi Ashcroft, who could well be a pick 1, pick 2, pick 3 like his brother, who was obviously pick 2 last year in Will. So, yeah, the midfield group at the top end, it looks pretty special next year.
Are Levi and Will similar players?
Very similar, yeah. They're pretty similar people, pretty similar players, and yeah, they're going to work pretty well in tandem together as well. They played last year together for the Dragons a couple of times.
Okay, so there you have it. That's just a little glimpse of what is to come in season 2024 when we look ahead to the draft crop. Riley, we will sort of look over and sum this all up and put a pretty bow on it.
I did wonder if the Western Bulldogs might have been fielding a few calls there to try and trade that pick, and if there was still any interest to get up, because they took 4 minutes before eventually passing. So I wonder if they were either working out list spots, whether or not they could have got in another draft prospect already. Of course, they've taken 5 players, Riley Sanders and Jordan Croft last night, and then 3 more in Joel Frazier, Lockie Smith and Aiden O'Driscoll this evening on night 2 of the AFL draft. So I wonder if they were thinking, can we get a 6th in? Can we trade this pick out for something in the future? Can we do something around that before ultimately passing on that selection?
Okay, so we were just sort of going through Adelaide, Brisbane, Carlton and having a look at each of these clubs as we wait to see how things pan out and whether clubs continue to pass. But just looking at Collingwood now and just the 2 selections for them tonight, what have you made of what they've done, Riley, from a list perspective?
Brisbane have made a pick.
Oh, okay. Well, as we get to that in a second, you just tell me what you think about what Collingwood's done.
Like what they've done, added some speed in Harry DiMatteo, and we'll find out where he finds his position in an AFL system. But then Tao Giath, another one where they got in at pick 37 just before the 40 came up, where Hawthorn could have matched that bid. So, yeah, I really like what they've been able to done. Two players with raw potential that they'll have time to develop in a really successful side. So, yeah, that'll be pretty good.
Okay, well, the pick is in for the Brisbane Lions, and with pick 64, they have drafted Reece Torrent. Tell us about Reece from Peel Thunder, a WA boy.
Yeah, he's a midfielder. He goes through the midfield there and did that for Peel and also Western Australia through their under-18 carnival. So he averaged about 17 disposals. One of their best players throughout the carnival as well from a consistency point of view. So, yeah, it uses the ball quite well, and clearly the Lions have seen enough to say, well, the running carry that he brings is exciting enough to give him a spot late tonight, and he might be one of the last picks now.
Okay, so they've taken 2 key forwards, a key defender, and now a midfielder, the Brisbane Lions, and that looks like it'll wrap things up. Let's talk about St Kilda now, and their list manager, Stephen Silvani, has been good enough to join Sarah Ollie over at Marvel.
Well, Sauce, yesterday, Darcy Wilson with the first selection. He's garnered comparisons to Sam Walsh, who you also drafted. Do you see those comparisons?
Yeah, I think the running capacity, he's got that likeness to Sam. So, but look, it's not nice to sort of compare a young player to a player that's probably established in the AFL. I shouldn't say not nice, but obviously we rated him quite highly, and we were really delighted that we got him through the door.
He's got pretty lofty expectations. He said that he wants to play round 1. Does he have the kind of temperament and body and skill to be able to do that?
I like the fact that he's aiming for round 1. Obviously a lot can happen between now and the first game of the year, but look, we know that he's a high achiever, and he's motivated to get the best out of himself. So, obviously that's a sign that he wants to compete and want to be the best player he possibly can be.
And 10 selections later, Lance Collard, he just seems like a really fun player, and that Saints fans are going to have fun watching him. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, you probably saw the highlights, and he's got tremendous speed, and he's very agile and can kick a goal. So he should light up that forward line at the Saints in the coming years. But obviously all the players that we've selected over the last 2 nights have got a lot of work to do to play AFL football. It's not easy, so the expectation really isn't for them to play football in their first year. We need to build their bodies and make sure they're right to play. So, but if they do, that's an added bonus.
All right, Cal, Riley and Nat, over to you.
Sosa, you've been one of the most active clubs at the draft. 5 players picked, and it was pace to begin with, and then Ari Schoenmaker with the last selection for you guys tonight. Were you surprised he was still available at that point? Were you weighing him up as the night unfolded as well?
Yeah, a little bit surprised, but look, we're just delighted to get him through the door. We know what his asset is. I mean, he's got that elite kick. Cal. So, you know, and we know that he can run as well, and he's a good size. So, you know, obviously he's got a lot of work to do, but, you know, most young boys do. So, but we're happy to have him on board.
Sauce, Cal just mentioned it there, but the speed that you managed to bring in with your first 4 picks in Darcy Wilson and Lance Collard, and then obviously Angus Hastie and Hugo Garcia, how much was speed a focus during this draft period for you?
Yeah, I think, look, we wanted to bring speed in, and obviously during the trade period as well, we got Liam Henry through the door and Paddy Dow, so they just happened to be there. I mean, that was obviously a bit of a focus, but as the draft sort of unfolded, those players were still on the board, and we're happy to pick them off.
Sauce, well done on the draft across these 2 nights. Go and enjoy what is left of tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.
And Stephen Silvani, of course, St Kilda's list manager. And the 2023 AFL draft is now complete. 64 players in total have made their way onto an AFL list over the last couple of nights. There have been so many wonderful stories out of this year's draft pool, but the prospect of the year has to be Harley Reid. So much hype around this generational player, and last night he was officially crowned the #1 pick.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 AFL Draft.
Taking away, mate. Away you go, mate. You're on the clock. 1151 3717. That's the man. That would be him.
With pick 1, the West Coast Eagles select Harley Reid from the Bendigo Pioneers and the Tongala Football Netball Club.
It was superb, to be honest. Walking in on that red carpet gave me a couple of butterflies, but again, yeah, I was super stoked to be read out by the West Coast Eagles, and yeah, I'm just super grateful to be in the position I am. I got around the back, had the jumper there with me in my hand. Let's not camp size. I turned around and Simo was there. Yeah, boy, you got me. I just said that too. And then we kind of moved through and did different media type of things. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Thanks very much, man. What do I say? What do I say? Up the Eagles. How are we? G'day West Coast Eagles fans, it's Harley Reid here. Can't wait to get over there and get stuck in. Yo! Oh yeah, how are you? Harley, nice to meet you, thank you. Sammy, good work. Cheers man, thank you.
Try out the media.
Yeah, it's a huge relief. Yeah, I don't know, I was pretty cruisy going into it, and butterflies kind of got to me in the end, but yeah, I'm just super grateful to be in the position I am.
Hey, when do you move over to Perth?
I don't exactly know at the moment, but I just want to live in Bassadine.
Harley, I tell you, mate, if you ever want to do that, I am the man to be. You'll love good old-fashioned Bassadine. It's very blue-collar kind of place.
And as we let you go, at Tongala, I haven't been there. What do you most, apart from the family, what would you most miss from leaving a town that not many West Australians would know about?
About Tony.
Yeah, about your hometown.
Probably that it's a family community, like it's a community. That I won't do that. Hey, how are you? Cheers, man. Mate. Appreciate it. Legend.
What is the first of the Kangas?
Yeah. Cheers, thank you. The #9 is just something that I'll cherish forever, and yeah, it's just super honoured, to be honest. Like, there's no words to explain how I'm feeling right now. So yeah, obviously 2 players, Ben Cousins and Nick Nat, I've watched throughout my career, to be honest. They're huge. They've done so much to the game, and yeah, it means so much to the West Coast Eagles club, and I'm keen to hopefully put some more history behind the number, and yeah, I'm just so stoked to be on board and to wear this jumper, to run out with this jumper round 1 or whenever it is. I'm just going to be through the roof, to be honest. So yeah, can't wait.
What's Nick Nat told you?
No, it's actually funny. Like this morning, this arvo, I kind of got on the scooter to head back to my hotel after I left my mates at the hotel, and I'm on the scooter, and there he is, just out the front. So I've pulled up on me scooter and said g'day, shook his hand, and that was pretty humbling, but it was pretty cool. So yeah, come here, boy. You reckon you look good or what? You like it? There'll be a few challenges that come across with leaving home. Like I've never left my family at home. It was 18 years being at home, so yeah, it's obviously going to be a challenge, and there would have been a challenge wherever club I went to with that. But yeah, I'm just super pumped to get out in the real life, and yeah, to get in the AFL system is huge, and can't wait to get in there and hopefully dig in and put the front foot forward and play some good footy with a great history and great club over there.
What a star Harley Reid is going to be in the competition for years to come. And thank you very much to West Coast's media team for providing us with that package. That was fabulous to see the behind the scenes. You're watching AFL.com.au and the AFL Live at the 2023 AFL Draft is now completed. 64 players have made their way onto an AFL list. We're going to recap what has happened across both nights. We'll start with night 1 of the draft, and it was action-packed. After Harley Reid was taken and crowned the number 1 draft pick, we had the Roos select Colby McKercher and Zane Dersma. The Wizard arrived at Waverley. There's a new colonel at the kennel in Riley Sanders. Caleb Windsor, well, the D's certainly got their man, and as we've spoken about for the last 24 hours, it was the curtain call, the bold move from the Crows to trade up into that pick, and the Giants moving back, and they took Phoenix Gothard.
That's right. That was their first pick, and then the next one was James Leake. Some other highlights there. We saw Will Green, the ruckman. He was one of a couple of ruckmen to get taken in the first round. Taylor Goad later at North Melbourne. Will Dawson, Riley Hardiman there as well. Oscar Ryan, a bit of a surprise late in the first round for the Crows as we flip over to the second round. See some of the selections here. We saw some tours go early. Archer Reid to the Eagles, Logan Morris to the Lions, and then Mitch Edwards as well to the Cats. The Saints went for some pace in Angus Hasty. Ollie Murphy got through a few more picks than I probably thought he would, but the Dockers swooped on him when they could, and a couple of NGA prospects too, Riley.
Yeah, in Tao Jiath and Luamon Luol getting just before pick 40, so they couldn't go to Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs respectively. You see there, as we look at the round 3 selections, Joel Frazier, a player that was likened earlier in the draft but got taken by the Western Bulldogs at 45. Port Adelaide, they got on the board. There's a couple of picks there, and Brisbane finishing off their night with, I mean, they took a real key position focus to this draft, and they took Zach Ostalski there, and this, of course, being the 4th round of the draft. It's where a couple of clubs had to jump in and take players that were originally tied to them. So Hawthorn takes father-son prospect Cal Shadir. The Giants take academy prospect Harvey Thomas. We also see Essendon, they traded back up into the draft to get Archie Roberts as well there.
Yeah, that's right. And then we see a couple of smokies at the back end here for the Cats, and also that Oliver Wiltshire going to their first round 5 pick, and then their second pick a couple of picks later in Lawson Humphreys, a midfielder from the West. So that rounds it off, and a lot of great stories within that, as always, through the draft. That's part of the special event that it is.
Yeah, well, one of the great stories of the night was a couple of mature-aged players getting selected. Of course, Sean Manor was one of those 26-year-old who plays for Werribee in the VFL and had an absolute day out on grand final day for the VFL, and has earned himself an opportunity at Geelong, who had 6 selections tonight. We're going to take a look at 3 clubs, and we have to start with North Melbourne because, of course, they are one of the big winners out of this year's draft, and rightly so, given they were given an assistance package after finishing second last on the ladder in 2023. And you take a look at these selections. I mean, McKercher and Dersma we'd spoken about for quite a while, but Taylor Goad, the ruck from South Australia, was their 3rd pick, and then Will Dawson and Riley Hardiman to round it out.
Yeah, they got almost one of each, didn't they?
Yeah.
They get the pure midfielder in Colby McKercher, who was maybe the best pure midfielder in this year's draft class, and they get the forward, the really crafty, medium-sized forward in Zane Dersma, who's one of the best contested marks in this year's pool. Taylor Goad, the ruckman, Will Dawson, the key defender, and then Riley Hardiman, the sort of a different type of defender, that 185 centimetre mould who can rebound and lock down in the back line. So they've got a whole variety of players with their first 5 picks on the first night of the draft.
Now, when the Gold Coast Suns appointed their new coach in Damien Hardwick, he said about 80% of the next premiership list is there right now. Is this the missing 20% that we're talking about?
It could be. They're 4 pretty good players, aren't they? Jed Walter right at the top, Ethan Reid there as well. If you selections later. They matched that bid from the Cats. Jake Rogers, the bid came for him, the smaller midfielder who can probably start as a small forward as well. And then Will Graham, a midfield half-back option. All a little bit different. All a very good mix put together. So Walter, yeah, he's a special talent as a key forward. You don't see many key forwards like him come through the draft system. So a great night last night for the Gold Coast Footy Club.
And what about the Western Bulldogs? I'm keen to see what you both made of their selections. Obviously, at the moment, they're going through a bit of a review of their football department. Probably not as happy with their 2023 season as they would have liked. The pressure probably is on their coach as well. But this looks like a really nice hand of draftees.
Yeah, traded up. Obviously throughout the trade period to get into that Gold Coast pick to get ahead of where a bid was going to fall for their father-son prospect Jordan Croft. They managed to get Riley Sanders, one of the best midfielders in this year's draft pool. Jordan Croft, we knew the father-son bid was going to come somewhere in that 15 to 20 region. Joel Fraser on the second night, a nice wingman who's done some pretty exciting things throughout the year. Lockie Smith, we spoke about whether or not they need a ruckman at some stage throughout the draft, given they lost Jordan Sweet in the trade period, didn't really replace him. They bring in Lockie Smith, who, as you mentioned, Cal, is a really aggressive type. And then Aiden O'Driscoll, an interesting one because he's quick, he's fast, he's skillful, he's more of the quintessential small forward, which they don't necessarily have on their list. So they've got to be happy with the variety of types they brought in across the last two nights as well.
And we should mention as well, we don't have a recap, but 27 out of 30 for your Phantom draft.
In the 30, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. I'm happy with that.
Big tick for you, I reckon. Do you feel a sense of relief once that's done?
Yes. Absolutely. No, it's an exciting time for everyone, and wrap for a lot of the players who got their opportunity over the course of two nights. I mean, it's a thing that it doesn't happen, just overnight. It's generally a 6, 10, 15-year dream that's achieved, and we saw a lot of them over the last couple of days.
And, of course, rookie draft tomorrow. It'll be back again, you two. Just another more day before you can have a day off. 3 p.m, live on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app. What's in store?
Well, we'll wait and see how many picks that'll shake out to be. I don't think there'll be a heap of new faces come through there. A lot of players will get reselected from being delisted as experienced players. There's about 15 or 16 of those. So still some hope that some players will be able to get some opportunities and clubs will work through that overnight.
Well, that is it from us. It's been a huge 2 nights of the 2023 AFL Draft. Congratulations and good luck, of course, to all the draftees as they start a new chapter of their lives. Thanks, of course, to Sarah Ollie, who has been immense over at Marvel Stadium for us. Cal and Riley, thank you to you both. I mean, the work that you do, Gettable, all year, hats off to you. You're absolute professionals at what you do. Thank you, of course, to all the crew inside here in the studio, in the control room as well. Hair and makeup, Kath, amazing. Basto and Jack Haley as well, producers, and Lachlan, our director. We thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us as well on AFL Draft Night Live. It's been an absolute pleasure. Don't forget afl.com.au and the AFL Live app is your one-stop shop for all of your footy news. Have a great night.